Large site building.
Madam Deputy Clerk, time is 7:01. I'm going to call this public planning meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Weiss, second by Councillor Thompson. Comments? Questions? Call the vote. Councillor Kim, can I get you verbal on the agenda? Approval of the agenda? Yes. Councillor Kim's a yes. Councillor Gallo, did you put it in? Did you want to just give it verbal? Yes. Councillor Gallo's a yes. Councillor Gillan? Councillor Gillan's a yes. All right, there we go. Did you get that, Linda? I hit submit, but I'm a yes. That carries. So welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. Oh, apologize. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? I jumped the gun. None. Welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. Purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. For the planning application that will be considered by council tonight, the following process will occur. 1, town planning staff will outline the purpose of the planning application being considered. 2, then the applicant will be given an opportunity to make a presentation and address issues raised in the staff report or public concerns already filed. 3, following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the item virtually and in person. 4, either town staff or the applicant will answer your questions. Now I'll keep track of the questions, and when I have several, I will direct them to whoever can best answer them. It is very important that the town receive the correct names and addresses of individuals having an interest in the planning application. Therefore, if you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any further council or committee meetings concerning the application being considered, you must complete a planning interested party and speaker request form available. Right, Linda will hold it up, that green form right there. Or you can visit the town's website at aurora.ca planning notices, or contact Planning and Development Services by email at planning@aurora.ca to complete that green interested party form. And then you'd leave it with our committee coordinator, Linda, who's sitting at the front. Now, under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have the right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the Ontario Land Tribunal. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town prior to council adopting an amendment. The tribunal may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect of an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded. Names, addresses, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk, Town of Aurora. I will now ask the Deputy Town Clerk to confirm that notification to the public occurred as required by the Planning Act. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respecting item 5.1, PDS 23-015, zoning bylaw amendment application, SmartCentres REIT, Aurora 14700 Yonge Street, Limited Partnership X and Calloway Real Estate Investment Trust, Inc. 14700 and 14720 to 14760 Yonge Street. Notice of the public planning meeting was published in the local newspapers with at least 20 days notice. Notices were issued by mail to all addressed property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and signage was posted on the property. Public notification has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. I will now ask the Director of Planning and Development Services to begin with the presentations. Mr. Rumino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start off with our town presentation by our Senior Planner, Adam Robb. He'll provide an overview of the planning application, the zoning bylaw amendment application, and then we can turn it over to the applicant, SmartCentres. Paula Bustard from SmartCentres is here. She'll have a presentation. She also has her team as well. I think her architect and transportation planner that may also provide some information as part of the presentation. We can begin with Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Romano.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and members of the public. My name, as mentioned, is Adam Robb, and I'm a senior planner with the town, presenting here tonight an overview of zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 2021-04 for the lands municipally known as 14700 and 14720 to 14760 Yonge Street. The subject lands are located at the southwest corner of Yonge Street and Murray Drive and are comprised of two land parcels. The northernmost parcel is approximately 2 hectares in size and currently features a 3-building commercial plaza, including the Scotiabank, State and Main Restaurant, and former Winners. The southernmost parcel is approximately 3 hectares in size, and it currently features the vacant standalone commercial unit known as the former Canadian Tire. Cumulatively, the site has a frontage along Yonge Street of approximately 250 meters and a frontage along Murray Drive of approximately 170 meters. The subject lands are designated in the town's official plan as part of the Aurora Promenade. The intent of this designation is to encourage the development of complete and vibrant mixed-use communities. The official plan height permissions with respect to the subject lands are a maximum of 7 stories fronting along Yonge Street, and then a maximum of 6 stories internally on the site area. The current zoning of the lands is community commercial C4 with site-specific exceptions for each parcel. These site-specific exceptions are largely related to drive-through facility permissions between the 2 parcels. A rezoning of the subject lands is hereby required to enable the proposed mixed-use form. The proposed rezoning would establish a uniform mixed residential commercial C6 zone over the subject lands with site-specific standards. This will, as mentioned, permit the mixed-use development of the site in line with the permissions established by the Aurora Promenade, including heights. The conceptual site plan for the proposal features 3 7-story buildings along Yonge Street and 2 6-story buildings internal to the site. There are also 3 sets of 3-story, 8-unit townhouses proposed along the westernmost property line. Full build-out of the site would accommodate 900 units and over 2,400 square meters of retail space. A linear park is also proposed through the central east-west portion of the site to provide amenity space. The overall development of lands will also be phased, with phase 1 being the southern parcel, the former Canadian Tire site. Next. This slide here shows a rendering of the proposal with the phase 1 and phase 2 portions outlined. A corresponding site plan application has currently only been submitted by the applicant for the phase 1 portion, the southernmost parcel, which requires the subject rezoning to proceed. Slide. In addition to tonight's public meeting, a community information meeting was also hosted by the applicant this past January 26, 2023. This meeting allowed for dialogue on the proposal with comments received from the public, including concerns related to density, traffic and parking, ensuring adequate replacement commercial space, exploring opportunities for affordable housing units and rental, and accounting for sustainable building design and amenity space, while also ensuring no negative impacts through subsequent construction. These comments, as well as any additional comments received from tonight's public planning meeting, will be addressed by the applicant with further detailed review of the proposal to also occur. When appropriate, a staff report with recommendations will then be brought forward for council's ultimate consideration. Staff also remain available for any questions here tonight and moving forward in this process. And with that, I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. Mr. Romano?
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor. I think we can call up the applicant, Paula Bustard, to begin with the applicant's presentation.
Thank you.
Members of Council, my name is Paula Bustard, Executive Vice President of Development for SmartCentres, and I appreciate you being here tonight and taking the time to listen to our presentation, and for the members of public for coming out. We did have the opportunity to host an open house about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And it was a great opportunity to hear directly from the community on some of their issues. And I hope to obviously respond to some of them today, but understanding that this process will continue beyond today as we work to modify our plans and resubmit.
If I can just get you closer to the mic.
All right. Can you hear me better now? All right. I've never been told I'm quiet before. That is a shock. Thank you very much. So Paula Bustard, SmartCentres. And I also have with me today our team at SmartCentres, as well as Ismet Medhet from WSP, our traffic consultant, and Don Schmidt with Diamond & Schmidt, our architects. And Don will join me just at the end briefly to talk about the architectural vision for the site. I think if you can open up our presentation, please. I think Rob did a great job setting the stage and obviously situating the site and the application. Next slide, please. I think we can go through these. I think Rob already established them and I don't want to repeat, but it's obviously the sites on the northwest corner, or sorry, the southwest corner of Yonge and Murray. Next slide, please. I think here, just on the planning, when we acquired the second parcel for this land assembly, the first thing we did is we looked at the existing policy regime for this site. And we do have a lot of experience, obviously now working on intensification and redevelopments of some of our existing shopping centers. And one of the things we looked at is the site is drastically underutilized with the vacancies. Obviously, the retail landscape is also changing. So we really took your secondary plan as a roadmap of the redesign here. So we worked very closely to adhere to the height provisions. We did not go beyond the 7 stories. There was also a lot of policies for porosity through the site, both vehicular and pedestrian. There's also policies pertaining to open space and respecting view corridors to the War Memorial Park and to the War Memorial itself. And all of those things were put into play with the plans that we developed with Diamond & Schmidt architects. I think if you can just go to our a few slides forward, I think these ones were established. 12.5 acres. Yep. And we talked about the existing condition. The next slide, please. Thank you very much. So I think, as Rob said, the proposal that's before you is for 900 acres over 2 phases. But really, we started with a holistic design. So again, developing buildings that have the highest densities along Yonge Street and then taper down to 3 stories abutting the existing townhomes on the west side. We focused again on creating that linear park. That's a 0.7 acre linear park that connects into the War Memorial. Some of the issues that were raised at the public meet or the open house, excuse me, that I just want to address right now. But again, understanding that this conversation will continue. First and foremost was retail. So we are obviously, the site now has 122,000 square feet of retail, and we are proposing 30,000 square feet of retail in the redevelopment. I would just urge you not to consider retail as being a one-for-one replacement. The landscape has changed. The size of retail has changed. Our ability to provide a robust mix of uses is not dictated solely on square footage. That being said, as part of our resubmission, we are looking if we can increase that to a number higher than the 30,000. I don't have a proposal for you right now, but that was one thing we heard very strongly from the community is try to incorporate as much retail as possible. It goes without saying that we'll work with our existing tenants to try to reincorporate them into the developments into more urban formats, and we will work with them just as we have done on many of our other sites that we've worked through redevelopments. I will also say that there was a lot of discussion about grocery uses, and there is some interest on some interim uses. And because there's vacancies on site, we've discussed with planning staff and we've submitted a minor variance application to permit grocery on the site in the interim as we're obviously going through this redevelopment and utilizing some of the vacant spaces on site now for interim uses. So that minor variance application, which is not being considered obviously here tonight, I just want to make everyone aware that that notice for that will be going out in coming weeks, and that's something that we're pursuing. The other issue that was raised was access. There's an existing easement and access that is pertaining to the townhomes to the west to Yonge Street. In no way, shape, or form are we proposing to remove the access that the owners and the occupants of those townhomes enjoy now. We are proposing to realign it, but at no point would we discontinue that access. And certainly that is an issue that we will work with our neighbors to determine that it is designed in such a way that satisfies everyone's requirements. But at no point are we proposing to remove any access to the sites that benefits the adjacent landowners. So I think with that, there obviously were some other issues. Construction was obviously number one, I'd say, in the discussion that we had. We will absolutely work with the neighbors on pre-construction surveys. We will work on proper staging plans. We will be fully available at all times to work on construction management plans should this application be approved and should we proceed to construction. So obviously being good neighbors is a big part of this. The last thing is we are asked about tenure. This will be a mix of rental and condo. The absolute division of that has not been determined at this point. And also it has been asked if we will look into affordability options, and we will work with York Region on obviously looking into the possibilities of affordable units. But really right now, it is definitely going to be a mix of rental and condo, but we have not determined the percentage of mix at this stage. Next slide, please. As I said, the proposal really focuses on creating an organized block design through here with good circulation and great architecture. So from a pedestrian point of view, we are trying to create good, robust pedestrian movement throughout the site, through the park systems, through access to Yonge Street, and through access to the existing developments, should they wish to be connected. The next one, I think, as we talked about, is the vehicular connectivity. So as you see on the bottom of this slide, you see that we have realigned the access from the townhomes to the west through the site. Again, that is an issue I'm happy to continue to meet with the neighbors, but we are not discontinuing access through the property to Yonge Street. And I think I'll just ask Dawn to come up here and just speak to you a little bit about the architectural vision for the site. The only thing I will say is SmartCentres is fully committed to high quality architecture. And I think if you look at the residential that we have built to date, specifically in Vaughan Metropolitan Centre, we are highly committed to executing the vision that we propose and making sure that we are not value engineering or modifying the designs. And we have a great track record with Dawn on building developments that we're very proud of and have been awarded numerous design awards. So there is absolutely no diluting of the architectural vision that we'd like on the site. So I will leave it at that and ask Dawn to speak to you a little bit about the vision. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Paula, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name's Don Schmidt, principal at Diamond and Schmidt Architects, and we're the architects for the project this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you all and with the community this evening. The opportunity in rethinking the development of this site has really been, particularly with 900 residential units, is really to think of this opportunity as a mixed-use residential community, different tenures, as Paula outlined, from rental to market housing, and to do so in a way which is built around good sensible transportation organization, good pedestrian access, and within the height limits that are established by the planning team and the city of Aurora. This is a view seen here of Yonge Street, looking from the kind of War Memorial site across to the first phase. That there, as was mentioned by Mr. Ryan, there are three 7-story residential buildings with retail at grade fronting Yonge Street. These are the southern two that are pictured here. And on the right-hand side of the image, you see the greenery that is part of the new park and access from the War Memorial that is organized as a central element of the site as a whole. Next slide, please. As Paula mentioned, the intent is to really use high quality materials, brick masonry, really in a to give a residential character and a residential detail to the apartments that are on the Yonge Street frontage, as well as, which are 7 stories, as we've said. The middle of the site steps down to 6 stories. And then at the west edge of the site, there are 3 clusters of townhouses, that 24 townhouses that really step the scale down and connect with the context of the existing townhouses that are on the neighboring property to the west. And so the use of brick and good private outdoor space and a definition of the public space and retail spaces along the Yonge Street frontage is illustrated in this slide. Next one, please. This is a view, and on the right-hand side of this image, again, the park space, the linear park on axis with the War Memorial on the east side of Yonge. This is looking to phase 1, the 2 buildings fronting Yonge Street. You see the scale of 3 stories, really taking its cues from the kind of heritage fabric of Aurora, and then significantly set back the additional floor heights for a total of 7 stories along the Yonge Street frontage. As you also know well, Yonge Street slopes up significantly as it moves to the south on this left-hand side of this image. Next slide, please. A kind of another view looking from the interior of the block. All of the parking is contained within the envelope of the building, structured parking, very limited street parking. That's for all the kind of residents. It's managed within the buildings. All the servicing, loading, all the kind of operational activities of the building are all contained within the building envelope and the masonry and enclosure of the first floors. Next slide, please. This is just the kind of view that was shown earlier of the kind of first phase, Yonge Street diagonally across the right-hand side of the image. You see the 2 7-story buildings with a pedestrian route that connects Yonge Street between them to the interior block, which steps down in height. And then you see, as you move to the top of the image to the west, stepping down to the masonry townhouses, which back onto the existing townhouses on the west side of the site. Phase 2 in the future is on the upper right-hand side of this image. Next slide. Just a kind of another a perspective view of the architecture. I think that's the last slide, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry. This is a drawing that you see in the key plan on the lower right-hand side of the image, the linear park that connects from Yonge Street through to the west. And you see across the top a kind of blow up of the park design, which has a variety of green space, sitting spaces, a variety of planting that really makes this park that is about 0.7 of an acre, a kind of significant green space on axis with the important heritage of the War Memorial. The detail of the elements of the kind of materiality that's used as part of the landscape.
I think the rest of the drawings are just very, very detailed cross sections, which we're happy to go through, but I'm not sure if it's if we need to spend the time on it. So we're available for any questions, but just in short, I mean, we are fully committed to building the best quality product here and making sure that we are a good neighbor. If for the rental component, we SmartCentres will be the owner. Smart Living is our residential brand. So our approach, just so you know, is never to kind of build and leave. You know, you're kind of stuck with us for good. We want to be good neighbors. We want to work with everyone. And we understand that not all proposals are necessarily enthusiastically endorsed right away, but we want to be a good neighbor, work with you, resolve any issues that we have, and build something that we can all be proud of. So thank you for listening to our presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Now I'm going to open up to members of the public. First, we have 3 that have signed up. First is Chris Ballard electronically.
Good evening.
If I can just get you to state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Sure. Chris Ballard with Regency Acres Ratepayers Association. And I first wanted to start off by thanking council for the opportunity to present tonight. I think our overarching comments are that we appreciate what SmartCentres is trying to do here. And we're supporters of intensification, especially along the bus rapid transit corridor that moves up and down Yonge Street. So it's a good thing to help revitalize our community. But we have concerns. We have sent a letter to planning with some of our concerns highlighted in it. I won't go through it in detail, but I wanted just to touch on behalf of Regency Acres Ratepayer Association, a number of the key concerns that we have. Number one is that this represents a significant development at one of the 4 corners that in the next few years, Murray and Yonge Street will be developed. And our concern is that as each is considered independent in a vacuum from the other, that there will be an incongruity in terms of use, design, and density. So it's our sense that what the town should be doing is looking at the 4 corners right now so that it has a better sense in terms of what goes on each of those areas. That's not necessarily tied to what this development is doing, but it concerns us that each corner may look and have radically different purposes. Our overarching concern right off the bat is that the density for the proposed development is too high and presents some serious repercussions with regards to what limited green space park we have already with regards to, and especially with regards to traffic. We've said many times to council and staff that there is a serious lack of green space and parks in our community. And this development really represents an opportunity to help rectify that shortfall and to provide an enhanced living experience for residents of our community. Vehicle traffic, as you'll no doubt have heard and will hear from others, is of real concern. We know that Murray Drive really is a residential road. There's no commercial addresses on it, and we're concerned with that number of people and what sort of traffic that will generate, along with the retail that will be there. So there are concerns again with traffic that go back to density. It's good to hear the VP talk about retail on this site. because that's a real concern too. And it's a concern that we're going, as the four corners are developed, that the residents will lose opportunities to shop. If we lose a grocery store, for example, of No Frills, when that plaza is developed, we will really become a community where you have to get into your car to go to a medium-sized shopping grocery store. And that doesn't play well. That doesn't speak well of the sustainability of our local community. So it is good to hear SmartCentre understanding that. We'd like to see more commercial in there if possible, not necessarily, and we understand the day of the big box and that piece of property is long gone. But we think it's important that there be significantly more commercial so that we can have a sustainable community and that the town can benefit from increased tax revenues, which these days will surely be needed. So the last thing that has presented some concern, in spite of notices that went to surrounding residents, in spite of advertisements in newspapers, and in spite of our organization doing its best to publish, the local community, the broader community, is really still unaware of this development and all that it represents. And we would encourage the town and SmartCentre to make sure the broader community is aware of what's going on so that there's not significant pushback at the 11th hour, and that everyone can work together to really create an exciting development here that we believe will help with the sustainability of our local community, the sustainability of Aurora, and ultimately perhaps provide housing that is appropriate for a number of folks in our community who will be looking to downsize as they age, but ultimately something that's good for Aurora. So we look forward to making further comments. I'll leave it there. Our concerns, as I said, are really about, our major concern really is about density. There are too many people being put in too small piece of property. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for allowing us to make our comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Next up, I have Stephanie Allen. Welcome, Stephanie. If I can just get you to state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Stephanie Allen. Just my name, sorry.
Yeah, just your name. That's fine.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to bring up some things that pertain to the plans for the four corners as a whole. I realize that today we're only looking at the proposal for one small portion. However, I strongly urge Council to look at the plans for as a whole in order to ensure that no opportunities are missed so that the final developments for all four corners work well for the whole town. First, I just wanted to discuss quickly why developers are looking at this area in the first place. And I know a big part of that is because the province has a plan to densify along the Yonge Street corridor. And this is a theory I think has some great advantages, but we need to make sure we're considering the point, the purpose, which sometimes gets lost with large projects. Why are we densifying along Yonge Street? Because simply it's close to amenities and transit. And thus the theory goes that densification here would minimize cars on the road, would be a better plan for the environment. This all sounds great to me. The only problem I have is that my ward councillor is telling us that potential would be for us to lose a lot of these important amenities, grocery stores, restaurants, drugstores, that it would be replaced. And this doesn't make sense to me at all. I also understand that at the community meeting that was for this particular proposal, that the town planner had made a comment that people don't shop this way anymore, they shop online. Problem is with grocery stores, drugstores, restaurants, health food stores, I think a lot of that is still in person, and that's what's at these four corners. And then I also want to make a note that densification along Yonge Street It's really a big reason is because it's intended for transit access. This only works if the housing that you build is intended for people who use said transit. High-end condos don't really house bus passengers. Trains maybe. High-end condo densification makes sense to me by the train station, not here. So if there's going to be a percentage of those, I would think it should be a small percentage. What I heard today sounds like there's potential for something that would make sense, but I just hope that that's kept in mind. Really what we need is mixed income levels, things that are affordable by your average salary. We as a town need to do everything we can to plan this smartly. We have some fantastic businesses at these four corners, big businesses that are regularly frequented in person and are important lifelines for all the people and seniors that live in the area. Densification in the area is a great idea if and only if it maintains these fantastic drugstores, grocery stores, restaurants, relationships, meeting places, etc., where they are now in their fantastic locations for residents. Adding people to a vibrant community by erasing that vibrant community is clearly the wrong choice. I ask that our town council continue to make me proud and fight as best they can for this goal. I plead with developers to present plans and proposals that serve the community in a smart way that maintain the walkable businesses we have now. We can't solve the housing crisis by throwing up a bunch of random homes where people exist. We need to build places for people to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Steve Sutherland. Steve, if I can just get you to mention your name and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Steve Sutherland. I am President and CEO of Trellis Transit. Some of you might know me from being co-chair of the Aurora High School for many, many years, elected repeatedly. And I want to address some fundamental challenges here. And it's not just to the council members, it's also to the people here. I understand that we don't want more densification. I understand we don't want to be heading into Newmarket with that dedicated bus lane there jamming up the traffic. You know, from our offices, which are on Wellington, just down the street here, we used to, when we couldn't find what we needed at one of the Canadian Tires, we'd run up to the other Canadian Tire quickly, and we build robots and transit systems. And when the dedicated bus lanes went in, it was jammed, and we went, not again. And I'm not exaggerating. I am not exaggerating. Our offices used to be on John Street in Markham. John Street is south of Highway 7. It's the first street south that goes over the 404. Do you know that when they started building those dedicated bus lanes, people were so frustrated in the afternoons heading west on John Street, their eyes peering into the sun. We couldn't even get out of our office's driveway. I'm not exaggerating. The anger and the frustration and the mental health is unprecedented that happens when you put those dedicated bus lanes in. Now, pre-COVID, I spent a lot of time with Hamilton. You know, they got $3.4 billion. They decided to spend it on a 14-kilometer LRT. We offered them 150 kilometers of trellis. And you say, well, what is trellis? And this isn't a presentation to council about trellis, don't worry. I'm going to get back to this particular point. But trellis is a raised micro rail, goes in the hydro right-of-ways, and pods that seat up to 4 people or carry cargo like groceries. They move on this rail completely autonomously. So if trellis was installed in Aurora, we could start at the SmartCentres, head north on Yonge Street, connect directly to the library. So trellis connects at the 2nd story ideally with buildings. So you walk onto it like you're walking onto an elevator. We could connect to Aurora High School. We could connect to Aurora Heights. You know, we have another center. I don't know if you've heard of it. There's another developer trying to build a much taller units over by Wellington and the 404. They've got gas stations at the corners. And my sons, which were raised in Aurora, cannot afford to live here. The prices are just too high. So I'd actually be begging these developers to say, hey, create a couple more stories down at the bottom maybe and put in little studio units and slice the price. And maybe pull back a bit more from Yonge Street, but go taller at Yonge Street because you're not going to block anybody's view really. But the key here is that with trellis, we could deal with the school issue, because I've heard other people talk about that, we're going to have a school problem here. I've heard people talk about groceries. Well, Trellis could run east and west on Yonge. You get in the pod, you say, we want to come here, or I want to go to the senior center. Do you know the challenge it is in Aurora for seniors to get to the senior center? I knew some seniors that were in the building that wasn't too far from here, and they needed a car to get there. So what I'm saying is that, and I know, Mr. Mayor, you have a motion coming up, I think it's next week or the week after, where you want to add the whole look at, expanding the number of people in our community into the bigger plan. And I think that's an excellent idea. And it would be the opportunity to showcase Trellis here. And then we could have more affordable housing without car congestion. Because, these guys have talked about car connectivity, but that doesn't really help, because we'll end up where Newmarket is, or Markham, because they have the worst problem when they put the dedicated bus lanes in. So I'm out of time. Anyway, so I just hope that we'll consider that our sons and daughters won't be able to afford this community if we don't allow more building. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public that would like to come up and speak? Yeah, you can just kind of come up and line up. Yeah. Welcome, George. If I can just get you to state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Maracas, councilors, staff, everyone. My name is George Kolikas, and I'm a 25-year resident of Ward 3. Thank you to the town planning staff and the applicant for their presentations. I will make a brief statement followed by some questions. I'd like to begin by stating that I'm not opposed to responsible development that is consistent with the application policies and regulations of the official plan and our zoning bylaws. I am, however, concerned by this proposed application, as in my opinion, it does not represent a balanced approach to planning. I'm extremely concerned by the over-intensification of residential development at the expense of reducing retail and commercial space. Paula, thank you for answering one of my questions. I do realize that the retail numbers will change in the future, but I still have the percentages of GFA to, the percentages of commercial GFA to residential GFA are still very low. If I may provide some context in this issue, I have examined the current proposed site stats that provided by the applicant's planner, and the percent of commercial GFA to residential GFA for Block A is a minuscule 1.94%. The percent of commercial GFA to residential GFA for Block B is 4.8. And for both combined for phase 1 is only 3.24%. So in fact, to provide some perspective on how this new residential development will negatively impact the community, in my opinion, from the lack of servicing point of view, I remind staff and council that the current retail space occupied and vacant on the subject sites represent approximately 122,000 square feet of potential retail space today. This potential retail space serviced a community of approximately 12,000 people. That's the population of Ward 3. What I see happening here with the development of this proposal is the reduction of approximately 95,000 square feet of retail to now servicing even more people, because there's going to be an estimated 16 to 1,800 people coming in to this community. In my opinion, this does not represent a balanced approach to planning and services of the community. So my first question is, how does the town measure service levels with respect to square feet of retail or commercial per person? And if I may continue, I have a question regarding zoning. On the issue of zoning, the applicant is requesting a zoning from community commercial, C4, to mixed residential commercial, C6. In this regard, it should be noted that the maximum lot area coverage for C6 is 35%. It should also be noted that the application is proposing a 90% lot coverage from 35% to 90%. I'm at a loss and would appreciate if planning staff can clarify how such a variance in an area lot coverage to be accepted or even contemplated. So question number 2, can staff clarify how the applicant seeking C6 zoning designation and a lot coverage of 90% against an allowable 35% can be explained? How can such a discrepancy be justified? Thank you.
Thanks, George. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name and you have 5 minutes.
It's Ken Oso. I'm the president of York Condo Corporation 207, which is directly south of the Canadian Tire. So my first concern right off the bat is it's personal, is like the lowering of the value of my home. So that doesn't seem to be fair for me. Or anyone here. And I went to my real estate agent. They said instantaneously, if there's a 6-story building behind your house, your value is lower. So I'm getting, a lot of people are getting screwed that way. Second of all, trespassing. Currently, just through our parking lot, we have 20 to 30 trespassers a day. I'm going to guess if you got 1,800 people and you can't even tell me if they're condos or if they're apartments, what the percentage is, what's going on. That's going to increase. That's going to increase my corporation liability. And if someone slips and falls, is the town going to cover it? No, the corporation's going to have to look after it. So I don't know why I have to assume that, as the president, assume that risk. You have 900 units, 2,800 square meters of green space. My corporation has 53 units with 5,000 square meters of green space, plus a 15 by 20 private backyard, plus our own front yards, plus a private patio. These are not living conditions. I don't know who would want to live in these units. Why are we cramming in so many units and not making them livable? I can't see someone interested, a single son or something like that. Yes, I can see that being, but I cannot see any families wanting to move in there with one parking spot per unit. How is mom and dad going to work? How is a couple that are going out living together going to work? We all know, well, I'm pretty confident most people who are together with someone, there's 2 cars. There'd be very few unit people here who are together with someone who would have 1 car. That 1 car just doesn't work. I don't see how that going. I also would like to point out along the northwest corner or southwest corner, the 7-story building right beside the chicken place. That's an alley. That'll end up being an alley. That's a perfect spot for people doing drugs, people urinating, people bothering people on the street. I'm bothered by homeless people at Staples, Metro, and the variety store over at Aurora Ready. So there's already an issue of transient people here. I also have evicted transient people off our property. So I don't see how this is any benefit at all. I see if we went anything type of residential, I would like to see just townhomes built there. It's with the same vibe of the whole community. You have nice townhomes. You can put a whole bunch of townhomes in there. I'm sure the builder can make a lot of money. You're going to hit your population totals. These can be single family private residents. And I believe everyone in here would love to have that going. That's what my 53 members want. As a side note, on the south end, there is a retaining wall. It is collapsing on the southwest corner. I have a picture. I can pass it on here. It is now taped up, but it is collapsing. And I have 4 pictures of massive cracks in the retaining wall. And before any work is done, I'd like that retaining wall fixed and made in order so that there's no disturbance to the foundation of my town units. And if you want, I can pass them here. As a picture, part of my spiel. I have some other things, but basically that's it. I'm against this type of building. I think we can do a lot better. The town can do a lot better. Our motto is we're in good company. Let's keep it that way.
Thank you. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name and you have 5 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Diana Koziak.
Can I just get you to pull the mic down just a little bit? Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
My name is Diana Koziak. I am a resident of the Mosaics. I have been in Aurora since 2004. I've enjoyed a quiet, peaceful place for myself and my two children who have since left. I have also read the geotechnical report as well as phase 1 environmental site assessment. As I do not have any technical or professional knowledge, but what I do have is real life experience with building large developments. And for this real life experience, I am requesting, number 1, pre-construction inspection, exterior and interior, done by an agreed upon third party. Number 2, vibration monitors to be set up in my home during construction. Number 3, direct number to site manager in case of emergency. Number 4, detailed steps to report any damage. And number 5, air quality control monitors as well, due to my immunocompromised condition. I would also like to know if the town of Aurora has a vibration control declaration, as Richmond Hill has, in their capital project requirements. If not, are there any controls that protect residents that I can access and review? I thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor and councillors.
Thank you. Welcome. I just get you to state your name and you have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Absolutely. My name is Evelyn Penikoff. I'm also from the Mosaics. I echo a lot of what individuals have said already this evening around the densification going from 35% to 90%. I'm also a little alarmed by, I don't remember or recall the exact stats that Paula mentioned, something about so many acres of land altogether that's being redeveloped now. And I think it was 0.9 of the overall, not 0.9 of the overall, but 0.9 acres that was going to be dedicated to green space. And to be honest, with global warming, and I know that there are other things that they're looking at from a climate perspective, the green roofs, that sort of thing. But we really need more green space in Aurora. We need more recreational space for children. We need playgrounds. You're, inviting 900 people or 900 families to come and live in Aurora in this space. We need to make sure that it's appropriate for families to be living there, that it's not a concrete jungle, right? Parking, traffic, all of those things I echo. My main concern this evening is what Diana was just mentioning around these studies. I'm concerned about the carcinogens in the ground. I'm concerned about what's going to travel to our community if that soil is moved around. It's going to be moved around. What's going to happen to our community? We're all responsible in Aurora for each other. Our health and well-being is in your hands, apparently. So I want you to consider that and how you move forward. I don't think there was anything mentioned about the actual building themselves, whether, I think Wendy, you mentioned it on the 26th, that it was going to be built on cement, on slabs, but there will still be pounding. There'll still be some soil that will be removed and moved around. And so that's a concern of mine for the community. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Peter, if I can just get you to state your name
Yes.
and you have 5 minutes. It's going to take.
Can I get my notes organized?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just going to take a moment for the document to pop up on the screen. Okay.
Well, that's fine, because I've got other things to say. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. My name is Peter Smith, and I'm a longtime resident of Regency Acres. It's approaching 50 years. I and others care much for our stable neighborhood community. We realize that we can't stop progress, but our input and concerns should be heard and acted upon. Changes are inevitable, but it's the magnitude of the projected change that we find very disturbing. I really condone and appreciate all the information that Chris Ballard mentioned, and certainly supportive. Council and staff will undoubtedly argue that these proposed mega plans are not on tonight's agenda, but they should be, since they are all tied together and will negatively impact our communities. As an aside, I ask that the press publish this map and statements to inform the public. By my calculations, about 95 to 99% of the current residents are unaware of these proposed future mega projects for our area. My major concern deals with the apparent lack of meaningful infrastructure. Architects and investors seem to forget the very human side of new developments. Green space is very important, but it must be realistic and not just pretty lip service. Concrete and asphalt do not make good playgrounds, and trees do not grow well under such circumstances. And another issue, where will people park their cars? It was mentioned that that staff and residents would have parking space. But what about guests? Where are they going to park? At the library square? I don't know. At the present, there are approximately 60 retail stores and businesses within walking distance of these stores. The proposed plans are silent on their replacement. According to these plans, long-term plans, residents cannot locally buy groceries, but must travel to other side of town. That is not right. We need to plan now before the southwest corner of Aurora becomes a retail ghost town. Phase 1 and 2 of the Canadian Tire project will add an additional estimated 2,000 to 2,500 new people. The current number of residents in Regency Acres probably equals 2,000. When these mega projects involving all four corners of Yonge and Murray are completed, the population in these areas will potentially increase 4 to 5-fold, up to 8,000 people. How is Aurora's infrastructure prepared to meet these needs? What plans have been developed so far? In my view, failure to address these plans with the public at an early stage is simply very short-sighted and poor planning. You need our input and support. Aurorans deserve and demand better representation. Councillors, it is your job to protect the residents. Please listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And just get you to state your name and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, my name is Michael Khalil. I'm a resident of Aurora living in Regency Acres, as well as own a pharmacy right across the street from the proposed site at 14800 Yonge Street, Sparkle Pharmacy. And some of the things I was going to mention for today is, I think, twofold, because I think what concerns a lot of residents is what's going to go on in the four corners of Yonge and Murray. But, you know, in my head, I know that that's not the purpose of this meeting. So before coming, I thought, what's the point of discussing it? But at the same time, as a resident and as a business owner, I think it's very important to obviously everybody that's here to mention that, a lot of us are looking at the long story of what's going to go on in this corridor, not just, this vacant plaza. So to me, it's easy to say, hey, where Canadian Tire is, for sure, it makes sense. Something's going to be done. Progress is going to happen. Developments are going to be made. So that obviously makes sense. But then I start to think about what's going to go on with the Four Corners. How's it going to affect my family? I have 2 young kids. How's it going to affect my business, which I've been working very hard to grow and to help service our community. So 2 of the things I thought of bringing up is one, first related to the Canadian Tire site, related to parking. And, as a business owner who wants, as a business owner, I like the idea of all the retail that's going to be going in, obviously in the plaza next door. That includes that, big box model is out and smaller retail will make sense. So then I'm trying to wonder what's the plan for parking. I believe it was mentioned that all the parking will be below ground potentially. And to me, I think of, as a pharmacy owner, who are my, who frequents my business often? And it's often seniors. And it's obvious that, there's a good walking score and we want to promote walking. But the reality is that a lot of people also drive. And I believe there is a lot of difficulty that ends up happening when the only retail parking available is, each building will have 10 spots. Like, I don't know what the number is, obviously, but each building might have 10 spots for retail. And then what's going to happen is it's often going to be maybe difficult to find parking, which leads to people maybe not going into those new businesses. And that often leads to maybe, businesses that open and 3 years later close down and then 3 years later. And I think, for SmartCentres or for the landlord, as long as the rent is being paid, that's fine. But for a community, we want people that have been there for many years. And, my pharmacy has been in Aurora for 30 years. And a lot of that is made available because it's a very convenient retail shopping plaza. It has good walking score within the plaza itself. So, their areas are covered, lots of ample parking for people to park. So, number one, I would urge SmartCentres to maybe reconsider the parking situation at the plaza for their future businesses, because I think that is important. And then the second part is, urging council and urging the town to think of what's really going to happen in the whole corridor of that, of this area. Because when I look at our plaza at 14,800, like, there's just no doubt it makes sense that it should be condos, on paper, right? But then you think of all the great retail that's in that plaza. And I think all of a sudden for condos to go up, what brought me to Aurora, can I just finish for 2 seconds?
Yeah,
what brought me to Aurora is that it's different than Richmond Hill, than Newmarket. And I grew up in Toronto, and, I don't want to live in Toronto and I don't want to live in Richmond Hill. So if, the plan is to make Yonge Street corridor the same as Richmond Hill, as congested as Richmond Hill, I'm not going to enjoy living right here if you, change everything about the way we live in this part of Aurora. And that includes as a business owner, as a homeowner, as a business owner, as someone that's going to go to the schools. I think that, changing this whole corridor of Yonge Street to be what, the province of Ontario wants it to look like isn't necessarily what's best for our town. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome. Can I just get you to state your name, and you have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. It's Tanya Sherry. I'm a resident of Aurora here with my family. Thank you, town. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Town Council and everybody for letting us speak about this tonight. Mike is my pharmacist, by the way. Where'd he go? He's fantastic. And we want to keep him here and his pharmacy here, and Sparkle Pharmacy, yes, is in the plaza where the No Frills is. I am myself as a resident, I'm off Henderson, I'm off McClellan Way. You know, I drive out to that very plaza because I depend on it for shopping at the No Frills. And I am concerned about the parking, just as I'm going to echo what Mike was saying about the parking. I really don't enjoy driving all the way over to Bayview to access shopping, etc. I really like the fact that I can do that a little bit more locally off of Murray Drive. Don't want to lose that. But I am specifically concerned that I didn't hear in terms of the commercial activity that will be in the new build, access to increase a number of medical services. For example, you know, inviting in family doctors to set up practice or subspecialties to set up practice, because with that amount of intensity of living, density of living, we do need more medical services or access to medical services. We can't, right now, I know I myself leave Aurora for my medical services. Like there's nothing here. And that's deeply concerning. That shouldn't be the case. I'm also concerned because, well, it is very high density and it is in a small space. I am concerned about the activity on Murray Drive as well. My kids use that space all the time when they get off the bus from high school. They're frequenting those shops. I'm not sure what's going to be left for them there. And also the amount of traffic that's going to be there when they are on foot. And we know that things can happen when people are walking across the street and people aren't necessarily looking, and there's a lot of buildings in the way. I am concerned about the safety of pedestrians, especially kids. You see a lot of our high school kids coming from GW Williams or Aurora Heights because they live in Southwest Aurora, or, you know, there's a lot of kids out on the street, and I am concerned for their space safety, especially when we're doing construction, and what's going to be done to ensure that all pedestrians are safe walking that street during the construction and then when it's finally completed. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
Klaus, welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Klaus Bernberg. I don't live in this immediate neighborhood. I live in the northeast quadrant of the town, but I have an interest in this development. From what I gather from the plans here, there will be pedestrian walkways and so on, but they end up on major streets in the T intersection, basically. So the pedestrians have nowhere to go but along Yonge Street or along Murray Drive to get to where they want to go. They don't go there directly. It would be a better plan if we had a diagonal pedestrian way through this, so ending up at the intersection of Yonge and Murray, so people can distribute into the various shopping opportunities, etc., and schools for that matter. So I'm not very happy with the utilization of the green space that is going to be afforded in this environment. Anyway, but my largest concern, my biggest concern is when I think about the building that is going to be going up, an office building, where they're going to be net zero. They're going to have greenhouse gas emission reduction. We have an emergency in climate, a climate emergency in Aurora. Council has decided we have climate emergency, but I don't see us doing much in the residential building side of the community that respects that. We have green development standards that are quite limited and very, very hard to really make a difference at this point. It might be improved later, but they're not good now. So I'm looking for the builder. I should ask the builder, the applicant, I should say, what is intended in this development in terms of greenhouse gas reduction, energy savings, like solar panels, heat pumps, and things like that. and disposal of water runoff and so on. I would like to see how green the applicant intends to make this development and set an example like we have with the office building that's coming in the east end of town. Anyway, that is my major concern. I'd like to have an answer to that. Thank you. And also on the pedestrian side as well. We need to encourage more pedestrianism. And I don't have a huge problem with just having one parking space because we are on the Yonge Street corridor, we are with transit and so on. And I think we have to expect of the new people who come in to be facing the reality that there will be a limit of parking spaces in future. And this may be a good start. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name and you have 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Tim Lowen. I am here on behalf of Dana Frost, an owner in Mosaics. A couple of questions primarily for SmartCentres at the moment. One was already mentioned by the gentleman from the condo corp behind, and that is regarding the retaining wall along the south side of what is being considered as phase 1. That is currently collapsing, has been for quite some time. I'm not sure exactly whose responsibility it is to maintain or do something about that, but I don't know. And I also don't know, I don't see in the limited drawings that we've seen what is being planned with regards to that. There's also a copse of trees, sort of an odd triangle of trees kind of up on above the retaining wall that I believe are part of this property as well. Be interesting to know how that's being incorporated. Right now it's, well, if you ever walk through it, it's a hangout for kids doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing outside of the trees. But anyways, how that's being incorporated into the plan, and as well the retaining wall. I don't know if it's possible to bring up the slide that shows the south end of the rendering, the artist rendering. Would it be possible to bring that up?
Linda, do you know which one we'll get that up. If you want to continue, we'll try to get that up.
There's the drawing suggests, yeah, you'd have to go back about 3 or 4 slides if memory serves. It just shows the south corner of the proposed development. It shows a considerable area to the south of one of the buildings in phase 1. There we go. See the bottom left-hand corner of the picture? It shows a fairly large flat area to the south of the phase 1 building. That doesn't exist. The current wall runs pretty much adjacent to the road that you can see there, all the way out to the street. That area that is being depicted as nice open space next to the building is actually Chuck's Chicken. And it's up on top of the wall. So not sure what's being planned for, again, along there to develop and possibly beautify that wall. It's lovely that something's happening to the property. It's been an eyesore for quite some time. If you can entice Canadian Tire to come back, that would be great. We miss them dearly. That was fantastic shopping, but clearly that's not going to happen.
I still drive that way sometimes. I forget. Right? So yeah.
No, that was the main staple, especially for Mosaics. I mean, it was right next door. It was brilliant. But and then the farm boy that we heard was rumored to be moving in there. That would have been a nice addition as well. But anyways, clearly none of that's happening. At any rate, the main concern is regarding that retaining wall. If something can be done about that, even prior to construction, it's been an eyesore and it's a structural concern for some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public for the first time? John, welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, you have 5 minutes.
Yes, my name is John Green. I live in the south end of Aurora, and I've lived here since 1983. And I've seen a lot of development happen since then, and it has gone along with some pushback, but in main, it's happened and it's done quite well. there is support, and by listening to all the presenters this evening from the public, I detect that there is support for this development. However, one thing that I believe the developers could do is to include what I call a features and benefits part of their presentation. And that's absent from this presentation from what I could see. For example, if they give a feature, it may be the retail, it may be the number of units that are available, it may be the cost of the units to rent or to purchase, etc. There should be things like what's the advantages to the residents of Aurora for putting this new development in with that number of people? And how did it affect Aurora businesses? And how did it affect the recreation facilities? We always look towards improving and increasing recreation facilities as the population of Aurora increases, and this is a good thing. But it would be nice to know whether these questions have ever been considered by the developer. I'd like to see a presentation on that as well. And lastly, I'd say, if I look at the official plan, of which I have been participating in, how does it really comply with that? Is it testing the edges of that plan, or does it really fit comfortably within it? And so there are my comments this evening. Thank you very much, Council, Mayor.
Thank you, John. Any other members of the public for the first time? Seeing none, Mr. Romano, questions? Do you want to go through them?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Mayor. I think maybe we'll start off with respect to a lot of the questions we heard regarding have we done the proper planning for this Yonge Street corridor? And I think some residents and council may be aware that the application before us is strictly for the site in question, the former Canadian Tire site and the Winter site, not the No Frills Plaza. But the planning was put in place when council adopted the official plan back in 2010, and the secondary plan called our Promenade Plan. And we went into a lot of detailed, extensive consultation at that point with respect to what I like to call not only a secondary plan, which is a detailed look at the land uses, road network, but we actually went to a detailed tertiary plan where we focused in on not just the four corners, but the entire Yonge Wellington corridor. We have a supplement document being our urban design strategy as well that spoke to logical planning, pedestrian connections. And with respect to this site here, it does conform to official plan. The only application is the zoning bylaw amendment to implement our official plan. And the goal of the Promenade Plan at that time was to transform these retail plazas to more pedestrian-friendly mixed-use developments. And that's what's being proposed. We need to review the zoning bylaw, obviously, with respect to the design of the development and the site plan. Again, we're in the middle of our current OP update. We've got a draft out, and we're bringing that back this council. We've had a number of public consultations, and we're not looking at changing the Promenade secondary plan. So we do have a plan in place, and it is not, we are unique in Aurora because we're keeping our heights to a minimum of 7 stories. So we're not going to be the New Markets or the Richmond Hills or other adjacent municipalities that are looking to be more in line with provincial mandates with higher density, multi-story development. The other question we've heard, and a lot of this will come out through the various review of background studies. Obviously, we're looking at the traffic impact, soil contamination. The applicant has submitted a phase 1 environmental assessment, which is a requirement. We know that a portion of the property has some contamination where the former Canadian Tire site was. They will require a record of site condition. That'll be need to meet all the tests of the ministry environment before any any building permits are issued. The other question that we heard was repeated regarding the amount of retail space. I think we've heard, and local residents are familiar. We've got a Canadian Tire and a Winners that are vacant, 90,000 square feet. Again, the vision of the Promenade Plan was to transform the area from the bigger box stores to smaller retail units at grade. So the plan encourages residential intensification with retail at grade. We're working with the applicant now. They've heard some comments about trying to achieve additional retail at grade. We don't dictate what type of uses come in place, but with respect to the zoning bylaw, retail, commercial, all those various uses, office uses, medical uses would be permitted as a right. The other question, I'm sure there's more we'll get to, Mr. Mayor, was the one question, why are we looking at the discrepancies between the existing C4 commercial zone, which is an old zoning, and the current zoning? Again, this zoning is to implement our current official plan vision for this type of development, this mixed use development in town. The 90% lot coverage, which they are complying with, and that's why it's specified in the proposed zoning, is right out of the current official plan as well. So again, this is the type of development that we want to see along the Yonge Wellington corridor. And with respect to the question of density, it obviously may seem a lot more dense than what's there now, because again, I don't have to tell everybody we have a 12 and a half acre site that has some vacant buildings and is completely asphalted, but there will be mixed uses. We're looking at an urban park. It's a requirement of our official plan as well. And there are a number of other background studies that we'll continue to review with respect to. The one question was vibration and geotechnical work. Geotechnical studies have been submitted. It is a policy of this council and a requirement that with respect to any type of development, we require pre-construction surveys and post-construction surveys to take place for any development before they break ground. There will be vibration reports and vibration monitoring that will have to take place during construction when we get to that stage.
Retaining wall?
Retaining wall, yeah. I mean, we heard about that at our community meeting. The retaining wall on the south side is owned by SmartCentres. They identified that it is in disrepair, it's collapsing. As part of their redevelopment, they will replace it. Part of that southeast corner will be regraded, and that's why the applicant did speak to maintaining that easement or that driveway for the mosaics out to Yonge Street, but it may be slightly realigned, but those easements will be in place, but they have committed to, obviously there's a need to repair the retaining wall.
Paula, did you want to add anything to that? Because I was also going to ask you about the environmental aspect and any green standards that you're proposing within the development, as one of the residents asked.
In the retaining wall, yes, we will look at if there's any immediate repairs that need to be done right now. But yes, the redevelopment of the retaining wall, regrading of the site was all contemplated as part of the development. But I will take back and report back to the community and have sent somebody out to inspect the retaining wall now. And sorry, your second question?
The environmental aspect and what you guys are doing from a green standards. And I know you guys are complying with our green standards in regards to the development, but if you could just elaborate maybe for
yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to work with Dawn and with the entire design team on implementing a good sustainability, a whole kind of litany of things that we'll be applying on site, both from smart building designs to obviously rainwater retention, permeable pavers, water balance on site. We really do try to take a very pragmatic approach of obviously doing what's right for the context of that site and working with the design teams, certainly both on the building and on the site design. Sustainability is something that we're obviously committed to, and we will provide a full sustainability outline of what we'll be doing both on the buildings and the site.
Thank you. And then I guess, Mr. Ramuno, we did hear about vibration control. We have them in place similar to Richmond Hill. Also, we'll be monitoring air quality. Will there be a direct number? Vibration study, as I think you mentioned, pre-construction inspections and post-construction inspections.
Certainly to you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we do require vibration studies and monitoring to take place. With respect to the Richmond Hill example of entering into, I think the question was a vibration declaration with the applicant. It's something we're obviously investigate and have a discussion with them. The other question was the
pre-construction inspections, post-construction inspections, direct line for people to contact, air quality.
Yeah. So again, certainly, yeah, pre and post-construction surveys is something that we require as a condition of approval prior to any construction taking place. A haul line is something that we've imposed as well in other developments. So we will work with the applicant again at a future date when we get to construction of some sort. We'll work on establishing a hotline between the applicant, town staff, and residents if there are any issues. Again, we have our own inspectors that would be monitoring any on-site construction. So those are definitely conditions of any approval that would be in place and embedded in site plan agreements.
Thank you. And Linda, can you just do me a favor? Can you just put back up that picture? I just want to explain to everyone what that picture is, so they have a full understanding. So this is what everyone is looking at. This is the town's plan. This plan was developed as Mr. Romano mentioned back in 2010. This is the Promenade plan. This went through a steering committee. I believe some members of council sitting here were on that committee. And this is the plan that was designed for the future of our town. And that's why I think Mr. Romano has mentioned that it meets the plan. So we've done a comprehensive plan when it comes to not just the four corners, but the entire promenade of what it would look at like in a full built out scenario. That is a full built out scenario. Doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. Could happen 40 years from now, but that is the vision for the town, and it's about maintaining the heights. So I just wanted everyone to have a fact that this is not anyone else's plan. This is our town's plan. Okay. Thank you. Any members of the public would like to come up for a second time? George, welcome. If I can just get you to state your name again, and you have 5 minutes.
George Koulikas, second time. 2 questions. Actually, my first question wasn't answered. My first question was, how does the town measure service levels with respect to square feet retail per person? And the second question in regards to the C6 lot coverage from 35 to 90. Would you say that the zoning bylaw 6017 is current? Because if that's the case, the lot coverage maximum for C6 is 35. I'm not quite clear where the 90% comes into
So George,
effect.
and I'm not going to get back in the debate, but just to answer the question, I can
Okay.
give you the exact section so you can look for it.
Yeah.
So under our OP per section,
Can we put it up?
no, I'm just going to tell you so you can find it. Per section 11.6.2 C of our OP, it states the maximum lot coverage by a building or buildings on a lot shall be 90%. And that's for the promenade area. So that overtakes the C4 or the C6 zoning. That is per our OP, not the zoning. Our OP allows for that 90% in that area.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
All right. I have a comment.
Yep.
Thank you. I've been looking at the official plan, and as you know, it's in a draft form and it will be finalized soon. The one of the major themes of the Aurora's official plan is complete community. A common definition of a complete community is one where people live, work, and play, and where the automobile is left at home in favor of walking in public transport. The official plan, the Aurora official plan definition of complete community, page 253, says the following: complete communities meet people's needs for daily living throughout the entire lifetime of providing convenient access to an appropriate mix of jobs, local services, a full range of housing, community infrastructure, including affordable housing, schools, recreation, open space for the residents. Convenient access to public transportation and options for safe, non-motorized travel is also provided. With respect to complete community, this is my question. With respect to complete community definition, as per the official plan, how does this proposal meet that criteria? I like to state that This proposal, when approved, will be the first domino to fall. Without major adjustments to increasing commercial retail space and green space, it will set a precedence. I realize that the Aurora Promenade future plan or concept plan has been in the works for 10 years, well, actually 13 years now. So plans do change, adjustments are made. However, it is important that if the plan as identified in the Aurora Promenade, the concept plan, the future plan goes ahead in that particular development or as seen in the plan or as proposed in the plan, in essence, the majority of the retail and commercial space in this area will disappear. In my opinion, this is a cause for concern. So we have to get this one right, meaning this proposal needs to be done right. It's the first domino that's going to fall, and we have to really be careful because it's going to set a precedence. So I would appreciate it if everybody puts their heads together and come up with a more reasonable solution with respect to the residential versus commercial percentages, GFAs. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, if I can just get you to state your name again, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Peter Smith. My name is Peter Smith, resident of Regency Acres. I will be brief. I've only got a couple of comments. In my opinion, this project, as it stands, sets a dangerous precedent for other intense areas of intensification in Aurora. It sort of underlines what George was saying. That's point one. Number two, they talk about transportation. Estimates of, let us, just for this project alone, 2,000 to 2,500 people. How are they going to be moved? We talk about dedicated bus lanes. What are the locations? Are they going to be by this particular Murray and Yonge Street corridor, or are they going to have to go to Bayview? It's an important feature that should be addressed very soon. I think was discussed. I was very surprised that the height of the buildings is 7 floors. This seems very contrary to Aurora's bylaws, and so I think it's been explained and provide details of how and why these were changed, and that's basically all I have to say. So, thank you and good job.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name again, you have 5 minutes.
Also, just a quick comment on the potential contaminated land over by Canadian Tire. I wasn't around when there was that chemical plant. I'm going to guess it was probably in the 50s or 60s. Is there any type of insurance? Maybe there would be prudent to have some type of contamination insurance, because if an engineer finds something and closes it down, there's pretty hard to stop an engineer. Maybe that may be wise to have with SmartCentre, to have some type of insurance to protect yourself, because all of a sudden, if you can't build on the land, just throwing it out there, that's something prudent to have. I learned that being president of a condo. Always protect yourself. So anyways, just for that, because also for the residents that are close, because now we're going to be exposed to something. And then if we're exposed to something, we're going to have to look for someone to sue. So it's going to be everybody here, right? That's why we're taking all your names. Just joking. Okay, so that's just one thing. And the other thing is, if this is a go, and it apparently you already have plans and stuff like that, and I've discussed it with the board of directors, I don't know if there's ever going to be a serious offer, but York Condo Corp 207 is up for sale. Throw up some more apartments in there. There's a lot of land, a lot of stuff, and we'll get the hell out of here. We'll go somewhere else, because we don't want a part of it. Honestly, the 53 units there, we're happy, but we don't want to have any of this. And we'd sooner sell the land, if possible, to a builder who wants to build there, continue on, and we'll leave somewhere else. It's just, anyways, just for an option, if you're interested in purchasing land, it's for sale. It's a fairly large chunk of land. And so, because if I can't defeat City Hall, I guess that's all, you always hear that never can defeat them. So just join them then. So that's an option, because that'll expand your plan, get more units. It'll look good for you guys. You're building it up, but we, not because we want to, we don't want to move, but we don't want to be part of this. What vision you have here, I wasn't aware of. And this honestly, it looks terrible for where I'm living now and how I'm living. My daughter's walking to GW and that, like, it just doesn't even look like Aurora that I came here 10 years ago. So it's not what we're interested in. So that I'll leave it at that, but that's an option too. So our land is for sale.
Thank you. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name again, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Sutherland, Trellis Transit. I understand what a lot of people here are saying. We don't want higher density, but I spent a lot of time downtown. Part of my time I'm down just off the Danforth.
Sorry, if I can just get you to
through
the chair.
Sorry. But sorry, Mr. Mayor. But I've been at CSI, the Center for Sustainable Innovation. I've met people who are renting rooms that are barely big enough for a single bed and their suitcase. They share a common kitchen and a common bathroom. Usually there's 5 of those rooms packed in. It's just awful. And they're paying $1,250 a month. And I had the same challenge at Crosswing and at Trellis. When I try to hire somebody, for $15 or $20 an hour, if they don't live with their parents, they just can't function in this community because there's no place for them to live. So, I heard about transit and the cars and the traffic. The thing is that somebody has to evolve beyond that. Corridor transit doesn't work. It's not going to get people to the different parks from this subdivision or any other subdivision. It's not going to get people to Aurora High effectively or Aurora Heights. Like the students are probably going to have to go if the density builds in this area. The boards are going to look for ways to get them. Look at the new Catholic school just down the street here. So what I'm saying is that we can't rely on York Region as a council to make transit decisions. I've been involved with their committee meetings and they're focused on corridor transit. So we have an amazing person that comes in the building I'm in is the one that has the Volvo logo on, that comes in the evenings and cleans that building. And I want to use that as an example. So I guess I have 1 more minute. She comes around 7 o'clock at night. And when she finishes in that building, she moves to another building and she finishes her day probably at 2 or 3 a.m. She needs that car. So when we hear people saying we want to price them out of the cars or, we want to get rid of some cars, unless there's a replacement that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Aurora cannot rely on York Region for the transit solution. And I think a lot of this is about congestion because they're worried they won't be able to get groceries nearby. Well, if it was Trellis and you got into a pod, you could directly go to the grocery store, or directly go to the park or to the senior center or to the library. So we need to if we want to keep Aurora an amazing place to live, we need to take transit as part of the decision-making process. And we need to look seriously at increasing density so people can live here. We elected a government, the last thing I'll say, we elected a government federally, and that government invited a lot of people to come to Canada. And those people are grateful for it. But as people have said here, we don't have the infrastructure nowhere. So we've got to start planning. And you as a council have a huge job to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep, Klaus. You get you just to state your name again, Klaus, and you have 5 minutes.
Klaus Wernberg. I don't think I had my question answered relative to making this building an example of a green building. My question now would be to the applicants, what is to stop you from putting solar panels on these buildings?
Just Paul, before I go, any other members of the public for a second time? Or for a first time? Nope. Okay, Paula, yeah, if you want to just come up, just answer that one. Then
Uh,
there's a couple others, but go ahead.
There's no plans right now for solar panels, but as I said, we will look at all sustainability options for the building design. The solar panels don't typically work well on kind of vertical buildings, but we will take a look at that and I can report back, but there's no plans right now for solar panels.
Thank you. Mr. Ramuno, how does the town measure service level?
To you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to service levels regarding retail, it's not like a measurement that we measure park levels. What we do is in our OP and zoning bylaw, we require the proper zoning for our commercial uses. And that's what we do. We put those conditions in place within our zoning bylaw, and we let the market dictate what type of user is going to locate in a particular zone. But our commercial zones permit a variety of retail, restaurant, personal service shops, offices, etc. With respect to, and again, maybe if I can elaborate on, why are we it's not correct to compare the old C4 zone and the site-specific zone. It's apples and oranges. Back in 2017, when council updated our comprehensive zoning bylaw, it was a big undertaking. Not many municipalities go through that very often. We actually pre-zoned our Promenade Yonge Street corridor south of Wellington. So in those instances, we didn't come this far south. And the reason we didn't was we took the first phase approach, and we knew that these larger retail plazas, we wanted a second round of consultation through a zoning bylaw, a second review as we're doing now. But if we had taken the decision to pre-zone as we did north of this, applications like this would not require a rezoning application. They could go straight to site plan application. So again, the zoning before us is simply to implement the actual policies in our official plan. And as we've heard, they're maintaining the height, all the urban design guideline criteria, park and pedestrian connections. Again, we haven't completed our review. We'll continue to do that. There are a number of different studies that we have to look at. And obviously, as you've heard, the applicant staff will also take all these comments that we heard tonight, last week, and we'll address those moving forward.
And how does the proposal meet our complete community definition?
Yeah, to you, Mr. Mayor. Again, another good question, and I would just encourage people, if they're looking at our official plan, you've got to look at the document that's in its entirety. Those are broad objectives, complete community. And what does that mean? There are definitions that are in the official plan, is to try and create that environment from a land use perspective where residents and business owners can, again, shop, work, play, enjoy themselves, go to dinner within a certain radius, whether it's a 800-meter radius, 5-10 minute walking distance. And so again, our official plan does speak to maintaining, adhering those principles of a complete community. The other question I hear as well is, and I've gone through official plan reviews over my career a number of times. I was here when we did the 2010 official plan. When is a complete community completed? Well, it never really happens. It continues to evolve, right? As we see in some of your communities, you're seeing infill development happening. But again, as the mayor mentioned, our promenade plan that goes back to 2010, we indicated back then, it's a decades-long plan to evolve, 30, 40, 50 years. And as we've seen, it's been 12 years, it was approved 13 years ago, and we've seen a couple of applications further north on Yonge Street. This is the first larger plan. But again, I'll just reiterate, it is in keeping with our 2010 policies and our current updated OP review as well.
I was just going to say, any other members of the public want to come? You're standing, perfect. Come on up. Yeah. And if I can just get you to state your name and you have 5 minutes.
Nazar, and I live at the Mosaics, just right behind the Canadian Tire. I just have more of a question, I guess a comment, just trying to get a feel for what type of demographic is this being catered to? Just because thinking about myself and my young family, I have a daughter that goes to school, and when we moved to the community, she was 1 year old. we lived in a sort of tiny condo, and we lived there for a year, right, when she was born. And that's the reason why we actually moved to Aurora, right, to where we are now. So I'm just wondering, looking at the whole space, I know personally and all my friends, we wouldn't want to live in sort of the big box, no playground, no trees, right? So, and also the elderly people that are in our community, I'm pretty sure that that's sort of not something that they're really used to, right? So you've pretty much eliminated that whole demographic from 30 to 60. And the young people nowadays, 30 and under, they're all living with their parents. Good luck saving any money for down payment, right? So who is this being really catered to, right? There's so many people here that have already voiced their concerns, right? It doesn't seem like it's really being catered towards the community that's here right now. But at the same time, who are you trying to attract, right? So I just want you to think about that. Looks like a very profitable venture. But thinking about the community as a whole, I think that's our main priority here, right? All of us, right? We're going to continue living here, I hope, right? Then we want to raise our kids here, and we want our elderly to stay here as well. So just I encourage you to think about the long run, right, as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Yeah, Klaus. Let me just get you to state your name again, Klaus. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, Klaus Bernberg. I'm sorry to bother you all. The question, because what I'm hearing is we just don't want to do it. That's the answer to my question as to what is to stop you from putting solar panels on it. My question now is, what would it take to have solar panels on your building? What would it be that you would want in the way of incentive or otherwise to make it happen?
Any other members of the public? Paula, did you want to answer that? What would it take?
I think the answer is that we're here for a kind of zoning and planning issues, land use, built form. Once this project, if it develops going forward, we will then be moving into a detailed design process that will consider a full menu of environmental options. As Paula mentioned earlier, SmartCentres will be retaining the rental components. So there is an interest in making it sustainable and efficient for the long term. That's what we will be doing in the next phases of development.
Any other members of the public? Okay, I'm going to close the public portion of this meeting. Council, we have the one application, 5.1 zoning bylaw amendment application, SmartCentres REIT, Aurora 14700 Yonge. The recommendation in front of us is that report number PDS 23-015 be received, and 2, that the comments presented at the public planning meeting be addressed by Planning and Development Services in a report to a future general committee meeting. Did someone want to move that recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, seconder. No seconder? Okay. Someone like to move something? Councillor Gardner? Seconder? Councillor Gilliland? Comments? No, we sorry, no more comments from the public. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the applicant. I just had a couple questions about the amenity space. I know that was a lot of concern for a lot of residents about the lack of space for play, leisure, or just hanging out. And I was trying to look at your plan, and I know it is kind of like a high level rendition, but I noticed that there was what seemed to have like lower level underground parking. Would there be opportunity to build something on top of that parking garage, whether it be a patio or pickleball courts? I know we all could use those, a playground, or I know even the Dell Manor has a beautiful rooftop where they have a barbecue setting. They can do event space, and you have even outdoor fitness equipment, just to expand on that space and make use of it.
Paula?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. There actually is a litany of indoor amenity spaces in the buildings, and we are going to be doing green roofs and terraces that are accessible to residents. So there will be a series of amenity spaces throughout the buildings. I think what we were looking was the publicly accessible to the broader public, that 0.7 acre central lineal park. And obviously the design of that park is completely open to feedback from the broader community. One thing we heard at the open house was the desire to have a playground in there so that children of this development weren't going to the neighboring development and using their playground. We are absolutely open to that. We showed it more as a passive kind of recreation, a bench, open seating, but it actually is quite a large space at 0.7 of an acre. And we could obviously customize the design to obviously the feedback that we're hearing from staff in the community. But yes, there is absolutely a lot of indoor amenity spaces, and we can provide you a breakdown of those areas that will be for tenants specific within the buildings.
Counselor?
Thank you. And that's great. As far as answering the question, I mean, being outdoors, I think is optimal as well. Is there opportunity to add to the existing plan that you have in your mind for amenity space indoors to expand outdoors if you don't necessarily have that on the ground where you are planning for that 0.7 acres or what you just told me, to expand on it by utilizing extra rooftop, whether it be on the parking or up above or in addition to that? So I just want to know that there is more opportunity to actually gain more, whether it's leisure, activity, park, play.
Paula?
Yes, absolutely. But I just want to clarify, there are some amenities on roof using that I don't think we probably showed properly in the presentation. But yes, we will look at adding some additional amenity spaces in unused spaces and maximize it to its highest potential.
Counselor?
Thank you. My second question was really about the commercial and retail. And I do understand that you're going to have eventually between both plans around 20,000 square feet of retail, which is a significant amount. And I understand that we aren't going to be replacing this with big box stores. My concern is I would like to see that when you are developing retail, that you provide opportunity for medium size. So they're not a bunch of cubby holes for salons and nails places. And I'm not knocking them because they're all great, but giving opportunity for bigger spaces. So, Healthy Planet or maybe a smaller version of a Healthy Planet could go in there, or a decent size of a cafe. We need a variety of retail in there. I think it's going to service people. And I just want to make sure that the intent is there with the opportunity for these variety of target market businesses could choose to be there. Is that something that you plan?
Yes, absolutely. And our plan right now is just shy of 30,000 square feet, but we are going to try to improve upon that. But you're absolutely correct. The square footage is just one element of it. The design of that space to actually be usable and flexible, that you have proper loading and circulation and access from the tenants and the public. So we started out as a retail developer. It's in our DNA and it's what we do. So I can assure you that we always plan our retail to be responsive to the market needs and to be responsive to a diversified mix of retail uses. So yes, absolutely. That will be a primary thing. We work closely with our in-house leasing retail team to make sure that we are taking all those considerations. And we work obviously with top-notch architects to make sure we're designing those spaces. Because I share your concerns. When people just put kind of retail at the base that gets divvied up and it's not functional, it just becomes unsightly. And we certainly do not want that.
Counselor?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Just one last question in regards to the retail. And I understand the concept is to be able to have walkability, and you do expect people are going to be walking from this new build to the surrounding businesses, which I would assume that they would do. However, myself, I live, I would have to hop in a car to get to there, but there's certain stores I'd like to go to. I just have a hard time seeing in this plan, if I were someone who wanted to actually shop in the retail there, how the parking structure or the ratio is. I just don't see it on the plan. Maybe I missed it, and just kind of help me understand how I would be incentivized to say, hey, I'm going to go shop at the stores that are underneath that you're providing, because I would like to contribute to supporting those small businesses too.
Paula?
The parking ratio for visitor, that's a shared visitor commercial, which means it's a supply that's available in perpetuity for people to utilize who are visiting the site for different purposes. And that's incorporated both within the actual building, the podium of the buildings. There's also the opportunity that we're working with staff on is the interior roads are probably going to stay private to do on-street parking and more convenience parking that just allows people to kind of jump in and out of the stores on a very convenient basis. So that is embedded in the plans now, but I'd be happy to provide more detail on the delineation of those spaces. But it is absolutely planned to have publicly accessible spaces for both visitors and commercial uses.
Councillor?
Thank you. And also just based on the marketing of that as well. Wouldn't want them to be conducive to just the people living there. Want to be able to see it just from the rendition. How would I ever know that there's a retail space there?
Paula?
Just based on the design. Yeah, I get it. It's high level. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I actually have a question for you as well, just to go over parking again. So by my calculations, you're going to need an estimation of around 1,000 or 1,100 parking spaces based on one parking space per unit plus the 20%, I believe, threshold for visitors and commercial. Is that all going to be below grade?
Paula?
No, the ratio is 1 inclusive of visitor right now. So per residential unit is slightly lower than 1, which is for intensification on transit corridor is actually quite a high ratio, but it is in podiums and it's all enclosed within the building. So the way the grades work, there's some of them that it will function as if you're in an underground parking, but you're actually above grade in the podium wrapped around. But from a usability point of view, you'll be going into the building to park. That is correct.
Thank you. Because certainly from the renderings that were presented this evening, it certainly wasn't clear. So now you're saying that there's no below grade or it's a mix of the two?
Paula?
It's a mix. There's a partial grade. There's a massive grade change when you come from Yonge Street to the western edge of the property. So we're using the buildings to kind of work with that grade and you'll be driving into the buildings. But a lot of it is technically kind of above grade parking with all the buildings wrapping around it. And then there is a level that goes below grade as well.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just how many parking spaces are you saying that you're required to provide?
What we are proposing is 1 per unit, and that's a blended rate that actually deals with the visitors, the commercial and the residential.
Councillor?
So you feel that even though you have 900 units, 900 parking spaces is sufficient to cover all aspects, even though there's no overflow parking anywhere in that area?
Paula?
Yes, we do. And we have done proxy sites. We've done parking analysis and other developments that are built at much, much lower parking ratios.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, currently, do you know how many parking spots there are at the shopping plaza?
I can get that for you. I don't know it off the top of my head, but typically shopping centers of that magnitude were usually built anywhere from 4 per thousand to 6 per thousand is what they typically were built at.
Because roughly, I guess where I'm going with this is when I look at an aerial view of it, I'm looking at maybe there's 500, maybe 600 parking spaces there now. And there's currently 4 access points. There's 2 that access onto Yonge Street. In the proposal that you've put forward, you've reduced the southern access to now there's just the 3 access points and you've doubled the number of cars. To me, that's a little concerning when I look at traffic management and the flow in and out of that property. So why did you get rid of that 4th access point at the southern end of the property?
The southern end, we really were looking at dealing with the grades. Part of it was a retaining wall and obviously creating unified design through the site and dealing with that. It made sense to move the access point further to the north. In terms of access point and circulation, we've obviously done a full traffic study. The traffic patterns for residential are different than retail. You don't get kind of a concentrated kind of flow at peak times, the same as commercial. You know, you actually get a more spread out distribution of trips when it deals with residential. But we obviously did the full analysis as part of our TIS, and all of that data is there. And we're happy to obviously go through that in detail with staff. Our traffic consultant is here if you'd like to ask any specific questions, but that all has been looked at. But the actual access point relocation had to do with dealing with the grading and the overall site organization.
Thank you. Thank you. And then as a follow-up, just in regards to, green space and parkland, did I read correctly on the presentation that parkland space or that linear green space is 2,800 square meters? Or 0.28 hectares?
It's 0.7 of an acre.
0.7, which roughly is 0.28 of a hectare. I
Yep.
just wanted to confirm that because in our OP, even for a parquet, the minimum requirement is 0.35 hectares. So I'm concerned again about the lack of green space for, was it probably 1,500 residents in that development. So that's all I have questions for yourselves. I guess my other questions is the staff through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rob. Adam, in your report on page 8, you have a table there for us. And I wasn't clear with regards to the setbacks. So perhaps you can walk me through the proposed C6 exception zones and whether or not through this proposal, we are making exceptions to the setbacks to allow for this massing. So I'm talking about specifically the front, the rear, the sides, interior, exterior, so forth.
Adam?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, through the proposed rezoning, there would be site-specific standards and exceptions made for those setbacks per that table.
So
Councilor,
can you be clear about what is our current standard and how much of an exception they're asking for? Just so I have a better understanding and perhaps some of my colleagues want to know as well.
Mr. Rob?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the standards are outlined in that table. It is based on the two different parcels, being the northernmost and southernmost, having different site-specific exceptions pertaining to them. And again, those vary based on the parent C4 zone as well. So each of the two parcels that exist today have site-specific standards in terms of those setbacks and zonings. And then the proposed rezoning as well will have site-specific standards. So we took the individual aspects of each parcel with those exception zones and compare them to the proposed rezoning.
Councilor?
Thank you. So if I understand you correctly, we are making an exception and reducing the setbacks to allow for this proposal from what we currently allow.
Mr. Rob? Councilor?
Thank you. And finally, through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, again, from my perspective, it looks like that's an awful lot of traffic flowing in and out of onto Yonge Street. Has there been any talk with the region about right in, right out access, signalized intersection? Where do we stand with that?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we've circulated to the region. We will continue to work with them. I think the midpoint access on Yonge Street now is, I think the region's first call would be right in, right out, but we will talk to them about full move access. Obviously, signalizing that access point because of its proximity to the two signalized intersections to the north and south, Henderson and Murray, could be a challenge, but that's something that we've noted and we'll continue to work with the region. And again, as council's aware, I think the next phase of the Viva Rapid dedicated bus lane will through this stretch of town will terminate around, between Murray and Henderson. Haven't seen the latest plan, so that may come into, may be a factor with respect to allowing for another signalization. But we've noted that comment, and the region is a commenting agency, so we'll be working with them to ensure that the access points, do work based on the traffic study and the region's long-term plans for Viva.
Councilor?
Thank you. Just comments, really. While I certainly agree that we've always identified the southern area of the promenade as an area for intensification, and it's been part of our official plans and promenade plans, I do have concerns with regards to the proposal in front of us. I think that I would still like to see more details around the transportation and the parking plan. I think that, it's important for us to make sure that this is a well thought out plan. It doesn't create further issues in terms of congestion and complications down there. I would like to see more retail, especially along the frontages of Yonge Street. I don't think there's enough in the proposal, specifically in the first phase. I'm a little hesitant to put all my eggs into the second phase and hope that that addresses the retail issue. I'd rather see it in the first phase, that be a little bit more. And then just in general, looking at the report, there seems to be still a a number of studies outstanding that need to be brought forward and addressed, studies that speak to vibration, salt mitigation, the construction management plan. Also Lake Simcoe's concerns that it appears that it's less than its current development, pre-development conditions when it comes to imperviousness and runoff. I think some of these things need to be addressed and brought forward at the next public planning meeting. I'd like to see more green space. It concerns me that if we were improving a small subdivision with significantly less units, we would look for having even a parquet, which is 0.35 hectares. And yet here in this unit that has 1,500 people, perhaps, they have a small green space. And so I think that needs to be addressed minimally. That needs to be increased as well. And again, the access points. There's only one off of Yonge, the two onto Murray. I just think that this is going to be a nightmare getting in and out of. I can see people trying to turn in and out off of Yonge Street. You know, I would like to see more detail information when it comes to the traffic study, some peer reviews with it. It's got to be well thought out. Otherwise, we're just going to make a nightmare out of the southern end of Yonge Street. And so those are my initial comments. But, you know, I agree that there needs to be some intensification down at the southern end, but it needs to be well planned out, responsible, and balanced, as I heard tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner. Actually, Councillor, I've just been notified by Madam Deputy Clerk that we are past our health break. So we should take our health break before I continue. Okay. Sorry, everyone. We're going to have to take our health break as part of our procedural bylaw. So we'll be back in 10 minutes.
What's going on? Well, yeah, I mean, it's good.
have to switch one of them, right? I think where I agree with Michael, which it is pick up on.
For the stats.
What are
yeah.
we allowed?
Oh. The question, and
So anything?
Counselor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following on what Councillor Thompson has said, could I just clarify that the setback to the Mosaics property is going to be decreased? It's going to be a new standard for the side yard setback?
Mr. Rob.
Mayor, so those side yard setbacks are shown in the report on page 8, and that would be the new site-specific standards as part of this proposal.
Counselor.
That will be the standard?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Somebody just mentioned to me about emergency vehicles and if they're going to be able to actually turn in the site and maneuver. So I don't know if you have an answer to that, but it's certainly an important aspect.
Mr. Romano, have we heard back from fire or emergency?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly that's obviously a requirement that any of those private roads, if there are private roads, need to be fire routes. So they have to be a minimum of 6 meter wide. And I think we've also, and so they will have to be available for accessible for fire trucks. And we've also heard that the applicant is looking at making them a little wider to add surface lay-by parking as well. Definitely, they'd have to meet emergency services standards. As a fire route.
I know it just doesn't look to, it looks to me like it could be problematic the way the development is set up now. With respect to the parking spots, there's 900 units. There's going to be 900 parking spots, 20% of which shall be set aside for visitor parking. And then in the chart, it's on page 9, it says 3.5 spaces per 100 square meters of commercial floor area, which may be shared with required visitor parking. So it seems to me that there's not going to be enough parking. With respect to green space, a 0.7 hectare, it's going to be a 0.7. It's going to be thank you, a strip. So I don't really see how a playground area could be put into that. You know, I don't know. It used to be, it seems to me we're going on 2 people per dwelling unit. Some will be, you know, single, some will be family. So it seems to me that you've averaged it out looking at the parking to 2 people per unit. Mr. Minow, is that?
Mr. Romano?
Because that's different from the other standards we've had.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the parking and parkland standards. So the parking rate that they're applying for is in conformance with the OP standard of 1 space per unit, inclusive of visitor. And then there's that 3.5 space requirement for every 100 square meters of retail. The parkland requirement, they are using our current parkland requirement for the promenade, which is the provision of an urban square, which is a maximum of 3% of the total area. And based on what they're providing, they're exceeding that. Having said that, we're going to take the comments we've heard tonight about looking at, you know, parking, parkland, et cetera.
Counselor?
Thank you. And I don't think that they're adhering to our indoor amenity space or even outdoor amenity space requirement.
That question?
It's a question.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on my calculations, and Adam can correct me, but they are the indoor and outdoor amenity space that they've identified within those buildings and exterior as well does comply with our 18 meter square requirement in our zoning bylaw per unit.
Counselor?
Good to hear. In the promenade plan, it's section 11.7.2 J. It's I. First of all, it says no site-specific zoning bylaw amendment shall be considered until the comprehensive plan has been completed. So we do have a comprehensive plan in place, but we don't have a comprehensive plan in place if there's a site-specific zoning change.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are provisions that speak to comprehensive plans that are required, but if they're not prepared as part of the review of an application, we have to make sure that transportation networks, road connections, pedestrian access, and impacts to adjacent properties are maintained. My contention is they have submitted a concept plan for that looks at some of the other corners. Our policies do speak to a logical planning area. And in my opinion, this 12.5 acre block, the way it's framed by, 2 municipal roads, there's no interconnections to any future lands to be developed, is the logical study area. But again, as part of our continued review of the zoning application and future site plan application, we need to address all those technical issues and some of the issues that, again, that we've heard this evening.
Counselor?
Well, it does say in our official plan that the applicant is required to prepare a segment of the comprehensive plan that includes surrounding properties, and that the public is supposed to be consulted, and the adjacent landowners. I'm quite sure that hasn't been done. With respect to height,
I thought that was a question, Counselor. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that definitely, we have not followed our official plan, page 109, I and J. So for the next public planning meeting, you can perhaps address that. With respect to height, the right of height for this is 5 stories plus 2 bonusing, and 5 stories plus 1 bonusing. So bonusing is now off the table, but what we have in our official plan is a 5-story limit. And we were referred to B2 in the schedules, and it's very clearly in there how it's color coded, that it's of right only 5-story height. So where did we get the 7 stories from?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as part of, can't remember the bill, but we're no longer allowed to enter into bonusing agreements, and in place, provinces introduced a similar mechanism, community benefits charges that would apply. So the old official plan, you're right, is a maximum of 7, 5 plus 2. Our current draft, though, we've been harmonizing that to include a maximum of 7. So council is still eligible to enter into agreements to require community benefit charges based on a maximum 4% on the total developable area.
Counselor?
Notwithstanding that we have a draft plan that's pretty close, we have to go by the official plan that we have. And in my opinion, it says 5 stories. The complete communities, that's been in planning policy for a very long time. This is definitely not a complete community. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Counselor Gallo?
Thank you. I wanted to first get a better understanding of density. I'm typically accustomed to some chart in our planning reports that identifies, what's allowed and what's proposed. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to whomever, if you could just speak to that. Is it just an open book that they could have come here with 1,500, 2,000 units and all studio apartments, and that would have been perfectly fine?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So our current official plan and draft official plan, the mechanism policy that controls Density is really that provision of height, maximum of 7, and it varies from 5 to 7 throughout town. There is no FSI provision or density provision. I'll be frank, I mean, not many plans really use those density provisions, units per acre, in this scenario with respect to intensification corridors. I can convert it. It's still a relatively low density based on the acreage. You're looking at, I think it's 72 units an acre. And the FSI, which is the floor space index, which is a ratio of the GFA versus the actual lot area, is, I think it's 1.6, which is, again, in my opinion, relatively low in the context of a Yonge Street corridor that's slated for, modest intensification.
Counselor?
Thank you. That's helpful. Could we put up that plan that we had up before about the promenade?
The one from the promenade?
Yeah,
Sure.
please.
Linda, do you still have that picture? Thank you.
So
Counselor?
this plan, it shows, the 4 buildings fronting Yonge Street, but I think we should note that it shows the Canadian Tire is still there. It doesn't show residential past the buildings on Yonge Street. So even back then, it wasn't anticipated to have residential go all the way to the adjoining residential community. It was anticipated to definitely have those buildings along Yonge Street, and clearly that the density that's shown there is far less than what's being proposed. I just wanted to point that out. I'm having some difficulty with the application before us is a zoning application, and it's for both parcels, and I'm having difficulty understanding. Well, I guess I can understand from the developer's side why they would want to come in with both phases and do the entire site. I don't understand why we would want to have that. Why don't we give them the zoning for this first phase, and really also in that deal with the retail aspect of it, because 90% of it is in phase 2. And as it stands today, if we were to agree, there's nothing committing them to building phase 2, and at least the way it's designed now, there's no site plan. And speaking of site plan, through you, Mr. Mayor, I assume we're not going to be seeing this site plan or phase 2 site plan whenever that comes.
Sharona?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Yeah, the site plan approval is delegated from council to staff. So council's review of this would be through the zoning bylaw.
Counselor?
We can thank the province for that we don't no longer have the public see those, nor us at this side have any input to the site plan and the details around it. And they're important. I think they're very important. We have a structure for staff to follow. I'm not suggesting they're just going to do whatever they want, but that's an issue for me, which we can't do anything about. But I do have an issue with, and maybe a question to Mr. Roman, through you, Mr. Mayor. If we were just to give the zoning for phase 1, could this development still proceed?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, likely we would just have to take a closer look at how that parcel and some of the zoning setbacks would, how it would function as an overall site. Again, the difficulty here is because the plan is to develop it on as one parcel. That linear park really is I'm not sure if it splits the boundary or not, but those things that we'd have to look at, sort of the mechanics of phasing the development.
Counselor?
And I agree, and that's my point. Why didn't they come to us with a full development, including why did they divide it up into phases? They could get approval for the entire site and move forward with the entire site. Why wouldn't staff suggest that to them?
Mr. Romano?
Through Mr. Mayor, I mean, my suggestion would be, and we can definitely speak to the applicant about submitting a site plan for the northern portion. The reason why is, it is a large site. They do want to develop in phases, and because the northern portion still has some commercial properties that and leases available. It's really just a question of phasing it and timing of absorbing the development within a certain window of time. Again, we can certainly have those discussions regarding whether it's one site plan and one zoning bylaw. But I think on a site like this, my suggestion would be look at zoning the entire site, and even if we take a look at a site plan on a northern portion, and that could still be phased.
Counselor?
And to you, Mr. Mayor, what benefit would it be to the town? I understand the benefit to the developer. What benefit would it be for the town to not take the entire site in its entirety and give planning permissions for? We're going to give planning permissions for the zoning for both sites, yet they're requesting a phased approach where phase 2 could be very different, extremely different than what's before us. Is that not possible?
Mr. Romano?
Through Mr. Mayor, that could happen, but if it is different, they would still have to come back to council and amend the zoning bylaw if they don't conform to the bylaw, if it's that significantly different. Again, I think based on the proposal, that phase 2 would be essentially a similar type of development based on the requested zoning bylaw.
Counselor?
Thank you. Yeah, I just, and I'm not suggesting this developer would do it. I've seen it too many times where we've given this type of things, and then there's, a lot of excuses could come up. The market changes, things change, and things don't get developed as we see them before us. Through you, Mr. Mayor, could you speak a little more, Mr. Muno, about the community, because we don't have bonusing anymore. You had mentioned the community benefits plan, and I didn't see it referenced in the report. Maybe I missed it, but what kind of dollar value are we looking at? What kind of what benefits would the community have?
Mr. Mona?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, we haven't looked at that in any depth. Our finance department is still working on that policy, and some of this recent information from the province. But I think we did report to council a few months ago. So the maximum rate, as I understand it, is 4%. Typically it could be in some type of community benefit or a financial contribution, a cash contribution, 4% of the value of the developable area. So we would then have to, there'd be land appraisals done, and that financial component would be put forward in an agreement. It's something we definitely have to report to council at a future date, typically when we complete our analysis and we provide a comprehensive report to council. But again, it's 4% of the developable land area.
Counselor?
And through those details would come up through either the next report at public planning or GC, wherever this goes.
Mr. Mayor, it'd be at a future date at a GC report, and again, council may see something through a future report from our finance department as well. We're working with finance to better understand the application of the CBC charge.
Counselor?
Thank you. And just a final note on in case I'm not pulling out of a hat when we've given planning rights to developers. In fact, this very developer near the 404. We were going in one direction, and the direction changed, and we had given it was a commercial, I believe, building that we had allowed, and we had asked for it to be built first, and things changed, and that's not what ended up happening. So that's why I'm cautious going forward in this way.
Thank you. Councillor Reese?
Thank you. I'm not going to review all of the things that have been done there, actually were said at the outset. I think it's clear that we are looking at parking issues, traffic issues, density. Someone asked a question, however, that I thought was important, was whether we're
right on the green space or just slightly over it. And could you just refresh me in terms of how close we are? Because the comment was in terms of trying to make it a better place to live. Are we just cutting it short, or is it right on? Where are we with the green space? Because I think the message should be we need more green space.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council Reese, I think the comment that I heard was obviously we want more green space based on what they're providing under our secondary plan. Our secondary plan has a different standard for parkland. This would be private parkland. It's what we're calling urban squares. That's a factor of a rate of 3% of the developable area. So they are currently showing approximately 2,800 square meters, which is about 3/4 of an acre. So it exceeds that requirement. But again, I think we've heard that, we want a higher, a larger green space area, more in line with, our other parkland standards that apply elsewhere in town. So again, we'll continue to have those discussions, but I just want to clarify that the urban parkette that they're providing, or urban park, exceeds the requirement in our promenade secondary plan.
Councilor?
Okay, thank you. The other question that I have that was skipped over very quickly, but I wrote it down for Paula and the proponent, is we were talking about a combination of rental and condo, and there was a mention of affordability in there. And I wonder if that was just put in there as a comment about affordability, or if they have some plans for that with York Housing. Have they had discussions with that? Or where are we with the affordability of these either rental or condo units? If I could ask you through you to ask the proponent where they are with the affordability.
Thank you. Paula, did you want to answer that? And Councilor Reese, I'll just let you know that when we speak about housing York, you're tending to talk about more subsidized housing, not necessarily affordable as per the definition of York Region, which would be falling around 550 to 600,000 range. That's what they consider affordable. We do have provisions within our OP for 25%, all new builds to have 25% affordable as per the region's definition. So Paula?
Absolutely. To clarify, we have not had discussions with York Region. It was suggested that we should have discussions with York Region at our last open house. Affordability is something we do take seriously, but you do look at the overall market. So sometimes affordability also is a diversification of unit sizes and a diversification of choices that people have. Obviously, Aurora is quite an affluent community. Housing prices are quite significant. A lot of them are larger homes, single family dwellings. So even bringing in more smaller units in a more urban format in and of itself is affordability. That's not, I understand there's also, doing subsidized housing or affordability through York Region. We have not had those discussions, but we have committed to do so, and we'll report back with staff on what the options are there. We are looking at doing a mix of units on site, both 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms throughout there. So I hope that clarifies.
Council?
Nope, thank you. Done.
Thank you. Councilor Kim, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My colleagues have touched on a lot of the items as it pertains to public planning. And I think one aspect of the public planning aspect that I'd like to address is really the architectural control and designs. I've talked about that many times in the past. I would like to see, another elevation or another architectural design, at least, from an exterior perspective. I think one of the things I've discovered in Aurora is that Aurorans have really a pride of place and location in our community. And part of that is the architecture. I think one of the reasons why people have high esteem over Aurora is the Magna complex. I mean, it's essentially a head office and a manufacturing plant, but you wouldn't know it from the exterior design, and people actually want to live next to this industrial plant. And so I think it would go a long way if we had a second or third option in terms of architectural design. I think that could win a lot of people over, because when you live in a neighborhood with next to a building or a residential structure that has great design, great taste, I think that will go a long way. And I find that some of the modern styles that we've seen in built in Aurora, I wouldn't say it's necessarily timeless and something that we would necessarily want to live next to. And so I think, if you can come back with another design, or another option, that'd be great. I know might be a big ask, but if we are going to go to another public planning, we might have a couple of months to see that. And the second point I wanted to have is, I know we ask this all the time in public planning, is in terms of how much communication was there with the local residents, as well as how much was it one open house, 2 open house, and I'd like to know in terms of what SmartCentres heard initially and what have they changed since the initial consultation. So that would be my comments. I'm not sure if it's too late to hear a response on that, but those are the 2 comments that I have.
And Councillor, and I apologize, I was just talking to Mr. Ramuno for a second. So was that question to Mr. Ramuno, or was it to the applicant?
To the SmartCentres team.
Paula, did you want to answer that, please? The only reason I asked, Councillor, because I was going to ask you to restate it if it was from Mr. Ramuno.
Now, I believe the question was, what did we hear at the public open house? So it was about 2.5 weeks ago. So we haven't revised any drawings. That just wasn't a time period that we could turn around a full new set. I mean, I think, as I tried to say in my presentation, the main 5 things that we really heard was just general questions about traffic, parking, circulation. Retail was a major issue. Construction compatibility and construction management was another big one. The access, just making sure that we're providing access through our site to the townhomes. And then just generally questions about amenities and open space. Those are the main things that we heard. Honestly, at that open house, there was very little to no discussion or over concern raised, at least in that meeting, about height and density or site organization. That's not to say, obviously, the public has raised some issues today, but that wasn't a prevalent discussion at the open house.
Council.
Thank you. And can you comment on the architectural portion of comments?
I would just say it's not an easy feat to go redo the whole design. There's significant costs and thought, and that's months of work to obviously put that forward. I certainly will speak to Dawn about variations, and we've looked at it. One of the things we take very seriously is architecture. We have, ever since we started getting into residential, we've made it a practice to really hire top-notch architects and work with architects that deliver high-quality products that stand the test of time. So from the day one on this project, we knew we wanted someone special, and we believe we have that with Don Schmidt and with Diamond Schmidt Architects, who's a very strong Canadian architect and done projects throughout the world. So we do lean on their expertise. That being said, urban design is obviously a big issue, and I will speak to him about variations. I can't promise you we'd go back to the drawing board and completely blow it up. I think we're quite proud of the design, but I will take that back and look at it and speak to the team.
Council.
Yeah. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, and I did hear during the presentation that there was consultation, 2-3 weeks prior to this public planning meeting. My preference, and it's always better to consult with residents, maybe even months in advance, or at least a couple of months, so that you can incorporate that feedback into the initial plan that's going to be presented in public planning, because 2.5 weeks is not much time to really make that much changes or meet some of those changes, which might be a little bit more significant.
Councillor, I got you coming up at 5.
Okay, so my closing comment would just be that, SmartCentres have been great corporate partners in the past in other sections of town, and I hope that we can continue the dialogue into the next planning session.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thanks. Just briefly, just to clarify my comments with regards to green space, parkland, et cetera. We have various standards. And so Mr. Ramuno is correct, obviously, when he says that, the standard for an urban square, which is defined in our OP as a paved open space, is 0.3, is 3%. Parkland dedication is 5%. But regardless of the mass of the development, whether it be 1 story or 7 stories, the allocation is the same. What I'm arguing is that we should be looking at our Parks and Rec master plan standards, which talks about the size requirements per 1,000 residents. Because at the end of the day, it's speaking to the needs of residents to have access to parkland for whatever that access, for whatever we want to contemplate. And whether it's a community park, neighborhood park, or parquet. And I'm saying even at the minimum level, if we look at a parquet, which needs to be at least 0.35 of a hectare per 1,000 residents, this does not suffice. And we've already know that we are in a deficit when it comes to our parkland, our needs. We talk about a complete community. All I'm saying is for 1,000 residents to live in this development, they need more space, more green space, more access to these kind of things. And so that's why I would like to see that requirement from a per resident standard as opposed to just lot coverage perspective. And so that's where I was coming from in terms of clarifying it, that and I guess we could also have a debate whether it should be the urban square and parkland dedication as well, but that's another comment afterwards. But I just, you want people to enjoy their homes. You want them to have access to these kind of amenities. You want them to, have more. So that's what I'd like to see.
Sure, Councillor. I'd just say it's perfect time if we're doing Parks and Rec master plan update and the OP update review. If we want to make changes such as you're suggesting, I think it's a great time then to put that forward and make the changes so that way we understand how we move forward as a community.
I just don't think you should have the same standard for a 1-story development as a 7-story. You got to take into consideration how many people we're talking about.
Let's put it in our plan. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question to Mr. Muno or to the applicant. The west boundary, that's actually the east side of Yonge Street, there is a very big dip in the land. I mean, walking that road from Yonge into the Mosaics or walking conversely up it, it's quite a slope, and that doesn't show in any of the drawings. It would almost put the condo maybe 1 or 2 or even 3 floors looking at a wall on the west side. Thank you.
Paula?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, there is very significant grade changes through the site, and I probably did a very poor job of explaining this earlier. That's why we're trying to use the buildings to work them into the landscape. So you have at-grade retail fronting onto Yonge Street. And then if you actually look at the cross-section, you see obviously portions of the building going into the grade, utilizing it for parking, utilizing it for other components of the building. And that's part of the reasons that we reorganized some of the entrance points, so that you could actually grade the site in a more sympathetic manner to actually create better adjacencies with the interfaces. And then you create that central spine that could be consistently graded and create a park zone. But we're really using the buildings to kind of play with the grades and to really make the site function to a better way.
Councillor?
Thank you. And the trees that are on that, the development's westerly side, those beautiful mature trees are, Mr. Muno, are those town trees? Are they staying?
Mr. Romano?
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe most of those trees are on the applicant's property. We've got the original arborist report. I think there are 88 trees to be removed, but they will be replanting as well. So again, that's something that we'll definitely take a close look at. They shouldn't be removing any of our town tree boulevard trees.
Councillor?
Removing those boulevard trees, which to me would just be a non-starter. I do want to thank the applicant for the light roof. I think it will be the first in Aurora, and it's a really important green design standard. So when this comes back, these are the things that I would like to see. Change the density, the green space, certainly looking at a complete community. The parking standard worries me if it's, I think you said at the open house there might be 1,800 people moving into this area. well, at 900 units, that would be 2 people per unit. So that would make sense because there's going to be 1 and 3 bedrooms as well. But if we have 900 spots, we take away the 20% that need to be provided for visitors parking. And they're also going to be used for commercial parking. I think that that is just not enough parking on the spot. With respect to the site-specific zoning bylaw amendment, I'd like to see a plan prepared that looks at the 4 corners. The applicant did prepare a plan submitted to the planning department that showed residential subdivisions on all 4 corners. So I believe they were asked to prepare something, but it didn't take into account the green space, especially. I think we need to do a better job of that according to our own official plan. I'm okay with a lower parking standard for this all 4 corners, because I mean, this is being built to take advantage of the transit. And as the first speaker said, you know, you have to look at the people who will actually use the public transit and plan what kind of units they might want. And it would be good to have the rental units, of course, but also a range of prices for people who are buying or renting units. And then the last speaker said, his name was Lazar, said that we need to show that we care about the community. And we do. This is what we do here is going to be a precedent for the other 3 corners and all the way up Yonge Street, north to St. Andrews Mall. So we need to be very careful and very smart and creative about how this is planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Muno, can I just get that picture I asked to put up? I just want to clarify once again.
If I can get Linda to put up I think it's the OP schedule B2. It's in one of Adam's slide decks.
No, not that one. It's the one for the heights. Not that. Yeah, the heights from our OP. While they're doing that, Paula, I do have a question for you as well. The existing retail that's in the plaza right now, so your State and Main, your Healthy Planet, your Scotiabank, what's happening with those?
I mean, they all have different lease terms, so we will work with them. But as we're doing intensification in our retail shopping centers, we communicate and work with all of our tenants, and we redevelop them into our shopping centers. We have alternative locations, but in this case, a lot of the service-based stuff, we'd like to bring them back into the development, and that's part of the rationale for phasing the development as well. You do it piecemeal, so you can move people from the retail and move them into the new buildings. A development of this size would not get developed in one swoop. And so we'd have a rational design. But the reason, just to answer the question, that we do the zoning for the whole site is so that we have a holistic design that's been well thought out, and that we're not doing planning on the site in a piecemeal fashion. So that's one of the reasons that we do that. But certainly we will work with our tenants to bring them back into the site in a more urban format.
Thank you, Paula. Adam, did you guys get that up yet?
Try the overhead.
So say just put it on the overhead if you guys want. That would help. And actually, I wouldn't mind. I mean, yeah, if you can just put that up. Okay. So I just want everyone to look at this. This is our OP, our official plan for the entire Yonge Street corridor and Wellington Street and around the GO station. Everything that is dark red is 7 stories. Everything that is orange is six stories. And then the yellow is 5 stories, and so on and so on. If at full built out, all of that would be a full built out as per our plan, would be 7 6-story buildings and 5-story buildings running all the way up and down, all the way from the north end to the south end of Yonge Street. That is our plan. That little picture that we put up, that was one picture within the promenade plan. And Councillor, you are correct. It still shows the Canadian Tire, but if you see on our official plan, the heights do allow for 6 stories, and they contemplate development for residential in that area, mixed use. And it, as you can see in the other picture, it doesn't show the northern part of it and the southern part of it, but as you can clearly see in the OP, it does show those heights in there and for the mixed use. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone, that that is our OP. But before I comment on the application itself, I did want to thank all of you, all the residents that have come here tonight to speak about this application. New development applications, no matter how beneficial they may be for the community as a whole, can and often do raise concerns for residents in the immediate area. Concerns such as increased traffic, noise, built form considerations, as well as short-term negative impacts that any construction can bring. Now, we as a council have the responsibility to address those concerns and get answers to the questions raised. And we will ensure those concerns are addressed in future staff reports. Tonight, council has before it an application for a mixed-use residential development within the secondary plan area or the Aurora Promenade. A development of residential units as part of the higher density intensification and mixed-use infill development on a site that is currently exclusively commercial use. A development that brings much-needed housing to an area identified for over a decade as primed for residential housing growth. Nothing is planned in a vacuum. It is all part of an integrated approach that is future-focused while meeting the planning needs of today. The application conforms directly with our official plan as outlined in our secondary plan, the Promenade Plan. It is our plan, our vision for Aurora. It was approved in 2010 and now under review as part of our official plan review. The Aurora Promenade Plan provides a framework for a long-term vision for Aurora, a vision that we are realizing now with the revitalization and community building initiatives, such as the development of the town square, and targeted intensification in transit accessible areas that have the greatest impact that Aurora can make in moving towards a more sustainable future by fostering mixed use growth, the Aurora Promenade. In doing so, transit will be supported, walking will be encouraged, and existing infrastructure and services will be more efficiently used. Now, this application is within the area identified as Promenade General. To quote the section 11.06 of our OP, the Promenade General designation is comprised of predominantly automobile-oriented commercial retail plazas with some office uses. As such, it holds the greatest potential for future redevelopment. The purpose of the Promenade General designation is to promote transformation into a vibrant, pedestrian-oriented mixed-use area. Change will primarily occur through the introduction of higher densities in high-quality mid-rise forms placed close to the street while providing appropriate transitions to adjacent neighborhoods. While new development will be mostly residential in use, convenience, retail, as well as restaurants, entertainment, and cultural venues will continue to be provided. Of the 8 key strategies outlined in the Promenade Plan, number 4 is most applicable here. From commercial strip to mixed-use promenades. Quoting from the plan, a key overarching strategy is to develop a framework to guide the transformation of the commercial strip plazas to mixed-use areas in the North and South Yonge Street promenades and the Wellington Street promenade. These areas are currently in flux, and there is an opportunity to transform them from auto-oriented single uses to walkable places where people live, work, shop, and play. Thus, as part of the Aurora Promenade, the proposal conforms directly with the town's official plan and sections 11.6 and 11.7 by promoting the transformation of a primarily automobile-oriented commercial retail plaza into a vibrant, pedestrian-oriented mixed-use area. Now, further, the design features a high-quality built form in line with the Aurora Promenade urban design strategy, and in particular, the overarching vision of transforming from commercial strip to mixed-use promenades, and strengthens the entryway function from South Yonge Street. Now, with respect to the density, there's been some misinformation that should be addressed, and I think we did address it a little bit. And while I agree that the density of the site at 90% could be reconsidered, it is simply not accurate to state that the density is in conflict with the town's plan or that it's well above the permitted amount. Again, I'll reference our OP per section 11.6.2C of the OP. The maximum lot coverage by a building or buildings on a lot shall be 90%. The minimum lot coverage by a building or buildings on a lot shall be 50%. So can we work on that percentage? Absolutely. But it is in conformity with our OP. Now, the current site is a former large retail site with a large expanse of concrete and asphalt parking lot. In addition to providing housing options that meet our OP, the application also provides an opportunity to provide over 2,800 square meters of new park space. Now, park space in this case is defined by the linear park, which is considered the east-west corridor centralized on the site, and the urban square. Now, could we ask for more green space? Absolutely. But to say that it's a lost opportunity is, again, inaccurate. We are gaining green space and an urban park, and in turn, removing a massive heat island. But once again, can we ask for more? Absolutely. Now, with respect to the need for more affordable housing, the mix of housing proposed in the application, rental and owned, must meet the requirements of our official plan, which states that a minimum of 25% of all new residential development must meet the definition of affordable housing. Can we add provisions to better ensure the provision of much needed affordable housing? Absolutely. In fact, and as was mentioned, I do have a motion coming forward to council that will look to strengthen our ability to do just that. So now overall, is there more work to be done? Yes. Can we work with the applicant to try to have more than 25,000 square feet of retail that's already provided in this application? Of course. But then I would ask each and every one of you, everyone sitting at this table, our residents, what's the right number of retail square footage? Is it 30,000 square feet? Is it 40,000 square feet? Is it 50? I'd like to see more retail. But with the over 25,000 square feet already provided, it's not a deal breaker for me because it meets our OP, but I'd like to see more. Would we like to make minor adjustments like setbacks, consider a reduction in density, or have options for amenities and parks aside from just benches and some green space? Of course we would. And these are the things that we can work with the applicant, as I believe, moving forward to a GC. Now, however, the height, lot coverage, retail, open space, this application fits our OP and our promenade plan to a T. Does it need changes from the zoning? Absolutely. But as our residents know, I have been a fierce advocate for the right of our municipality to have the authority to uphold our OP. I fought hard to ensure that our voices are heard by the province so that we have a say in land use planning decisions in our community. Well, this is a prime opportunity to demonstrate to the province that when presented with an application for much needed housing, including rentals with appropriate intensification that is in line with our official plan, our vision for our community, then we will make the responsible decision to uphold that vision, but make sure that it's done properly as we expect. And that's why I believe that we can go to a general committee meeting, continue to work with the applicant to find the necessary adjustments that our residents are asking for, that my council colleagues are asking for, and we can continue through the process and let the province know that we are responsible, that we can make decisions and we can make planning decisions so that they don't take it away, because we see what's happening now. They're taking away planning from our communities. And here's a prime example that they will use against any council that you're not looking to move forward in the process. And we all agree that there's some shortfalls and that we need to work on that. But we need to continue through the process as we work through those details so we can have the best possible outcome for our community. So I'd like to see this go to GC. I know that what we have on the floor is for another public planning meeting, but I'll leave it in the hands of council. And with that, I'll call the vote. Linda? Wendy? That carries. Okay. Confirming bylaw. Councilor Gardner. Councilor Gallo. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Gilliland. Councilor Kim, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, everyone, for coming. If you are interested in future, please make sure you fill out that green form. Okay? And thanks for coming out this evening.